5. Forecast. Some unwelcome introspection with a glimmer of hope on the horizon. A good morning, it is not. Sunlight streams in through the window across from my bed, my blackout curtains shoved to the side. My head is pounding and my tongue is too large for my mouth and my throat feels like I swallowed a vacuum cleaner filter and washed it down with straight vinegar. It's the most expensive hangover I've ever had. I almost faint when I check the time on my phone. 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, which means I slept through the equivalent of an entire morning shift. When I started this job, I relied on Tylenol PM to help me fall asleep and energy drinks to keep me awake. Now I maintain the same schedule on weekends, or at least very close to it. Garrison never loved my semi-backward schedule, even if I did. I do miss the way he'd cuddle me when I woke up when it was still dark out, his warmth almost enough to keep me in bed. I haven't cried about it for a couple weeks, and that feels like progress. The last time was when I was watching Netflix and The Crown popped up as something you might be interested in, and I started bawling because yes, not only was I interested in it, but we'd watched the entire series on his account. The idea that my own Netflix account didn't know about my love of royal melodrama and therefore didn't care about my breakup was, in that moment, unfathomably inconsiderate. What I kept from him, the subject of our final fight, wasn't a big thing, in fact, it was quite small. 30 pills about the size of my pinky nail, my prescription refilled each month at the nearby Bartell Drugs. The bottle had fallen out of my purse in our rush to get our Halloween costumes ready. My depression was under control, manageable, the way it had been for years with the exception of a couple medication changes when side effects wouldn't go away and a new therapist when I moved back to Seattle from Yakima. I take those pills every morning, just as I'm doing now, plodding over to the bathroom and opening up the medicine cabinet. It was easier if he didn't know. I didn't want him drawing a connection between my mother and me, asking more questions about why my dad left and who my mother was dating this month. What I needed to do was simple: prevent what happened with my parents. None of my exes had Garrison's problem. They seemed perfectly content not knowing everything. They loved how upbeat, how positive I was, how I let them get out their anger while never airing any of mine. I was the cool girl, the easygoing girl, and I loved her. If I was upset about something, I journaled or rage texted Alex. If they forgot an anniversary, I bought myself flowers. I'm bright sides and silver linings, and it's always worked for me before. If I insisted on being difficult, if I let any of the darkness out, well, then I'd end up like my mother. You can't be sunshine all the time, Ari, Garrison said during that fight, when his inflatable tube man costume had lost all its humor and lay flattened on a couch cushion. He didn't understand. I lived in two realities, and he could only be in one of them with me. If I've learned anything from my mother, it's that sunshine is the only way to make someone stay. No one can. Funny, really, since I don't like sunshine at all. Determined to get myself back on schedule, I go to a yoga class in the farmer's market, keeping myself busy by cooking an elaborate, too expensive meal for one person. At the very least, I've discovered one great thing about living alone: I don't have to hide from anyone. By Sunday afternoon, my goal is to tire myself out so I can get to sleep as close to my regular bedtime of 8:30 as possible. I ride for an hour on the cheap exercise bike I nearly broke my back hauling up the stairs. Then I hunch over my kitchen table, bending wire and stringing beads for a pair of chandelier earrings. It's soothing, losing myself in this work for a couple hours. Once I've finished them, I light candles around my apartment, pull up some of my favorite videos in an incognito browser, and give myself 2 orgasms before my vibrator runs out of batteries and I can't find any new ones, even after I turn my apartment upside down and open every device. Apparently, nothing else uses AAA. Except when I crawl into bed, knowing I have to be up in 6 hours, I can't sleep. Back when I was training my body for this, the more anxious I'd get about needing to go to sleep, the tougher it would be to fall asleep. I wasn't lying to Russell. I really do love mornings, but I love them a little less when it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 10:30, and I have to be up in 3.5 hours. Eventually, I grab my laptop, pay $3.99 to rent an HD version of The Parent Trap, and drift off right around the time the British Lindsay Lohan flies to Napa Valley to meet Dennis Quaid for the first time. My alarm goes off at 2:30 and again at 2:40 and finally at 2:47. I force myself out of bed, force myself to be content with the couple hours of sleep I got, even if remembering the Emmy incident makes me want to hibernate for the rest of winter. I throw my makeup into a bag and stumble out to my car, bleary-eyed. Sometimes I do my makeup at home and sometimes at work and sometimes while stopped at traffic lights, and today is a traffic light kind of day. I picked one of my favorite dresses to combat my exhaustion, a 3/4 sleeve mulberry sheath paired with brown suede calf boots. I have 5 of this dress because the camera prefers rich colors and solids. No green, or I'd disappear into the weather map. Patterns can wobble and shake, which is bad news for the frightening amount of weather-themed clothing I've accumulated over the years. I was never fully prepared for viewer comments about my clothes. It was shocking at first, people not just judging my appearance but outright rating my hotness. They usually score me the lowest when I wear pants. I hate that I've gotten used to it, but it's a hazard of the job. My first couple years working full-time, I thought about what kinds of comments I'd get when I got dressed, but I haven't since I started working in Seattle. If the trolls want to waste energy talking about it, that's their choice. And it's our choice to hit delete. There probably isn't a piece of clothing I could wear that wouldn't draw either scrutiny or a string of fire and/or eggplant emojis. It's not worth it to dress for anyone but myself and, more importantly, the map. After I drop my bag off at my desk, I make my way to the weather center, a cluster of computers in the studio we use mainly for forecasting, though sometimes we shoot in there, too. I check all my usual models and data, starting with the National Weather Service and the University of Washington, taking notes and crunching numbers before putting my own daily and 7-day forecasts together on one of our forecast sheets. This worksheet might seem basic, but it's how meteorologists have been doing this job for years, and many of us still do it by hand. After I finish, I'll start building the graphics viewers will see during the broadcast. I yelp when I feel a hand on the back of my chair. Sorry, Torrance says, and prior to Friday, I wouldn't have been sure I'd ever heard her utter that word. Can I talk to you? I set down my pen in the middle of a Wednesday sunbreak and turn in my chair to face her. Of course. This is far too early for her to be at the station. Something's up. The coffee I drank too fast churns in my stomach. There's no way she could have overheard Russell and me. And yet there we were, so openly shitting on our bosses in a semi-public place. It's not impossible that it got back to her. She slides into the chair next to me, looking a little softer than usual in jeans and a white sweater. No camera makeup, just a touch of eyeshadow and mascara. I was hoping to catch you without too many people here, she says. I wanted to personally apologize for what happened on Friday. Sober, this time. What I did, was unacceptable, and at a party, no less. Torrance Hale is apologizing to me. Again. It's almost as out of character as this meme of her that went viral before I started at KSEA. She was covering a heat wave and getting some man on the street footage at Hempfest, Seattle's annual marijuana festival, when a guy offered her a joint on camera. She declined it with a laugh and a, maybe later, and I've never known whether she meant it or whether she was joking. Regardless, the internet turned it into a GIF that still makes me double-take whenever I see it. Some people swear they can see her winking as she responds, while others have argued that it's just a blink. Oh, okay? I manage, my thumb brushing the lightning bolt at the base of my throat. Torrance straightened some papers, and I wonder if she's thinking about what Seth said about the weather center being a disaster zone. Seth and I shouldn't have dragged you into it, with that game. We were acting immature. It was personal, and we should have stopped ourselves before we went that far. I absolutely should have stopped myself before what happened with the Emmy. I want to tell Torrance that it wasn't just what happened at the party. It's been 100 different things, this is just the one with the most visible wreckage. I appreciate that. In spite of everything, my optimism takes over. I want to believe her. And maybe this makes me naive, but part of me does. I believe the Torrance who was on my TV as a kid, who was there for me when my mother was sunk in her own deep depression. I'm just not sure how much of that Torrance is the one sitting next to me right now. She grins like she's about to tell several thousand viewers that there's no rush hour traffic today. Let me take you out to lunch today to make it up to you? You pick the place. A lunch invitation. Like maybe it really is that easy for the two of us to be something more than employee and distracted boss. Like maybe there's more of my childhood idol in her than I thought. You really don't have to, I say. I insist. Torrance cups my shoulder with one hand, gives me that upper 70s smile again. Thanks, Ari. I look forward to it. I glow the rest of the morning, the conversation waking me up more than any amount of caffeine. My first forecast, I'm all smiles, despite my 3 hours of sleep. I'm half tempted to edit emojis into my cloud graphics. Maybe Torrance and I will talk about Hailstorm, about the bigger stories I want to be doing. Maybe I'll bring up my annual eval, and while I won't say how disappointed I was last year when she simply said, "You're doing great, Abrams," and gave me the union-mandated 1.5% raise, I'll make sure she knows how eager I am to learn. To improve. By 11 o'clock, I'm scanning menus of the Belltown lunch spots I haven't tried yet and posting viewer photos of last week's storm on social media when I hear Seth's voice booming from Torrance's office. "I told you we can't air this," he's saying. The office door is open a crack. Avery Mitchell catches my eye from a couple desks away. "Torrance's story about Dungeness crabs and climate change," she says by way of explanation. About how the rising acidity in the ocean is damaging their shells. "We were working on it all last month, talked to a ton of scientists. It was supposed to air this afternoon as part of a series on marine life, and I'm guessing Seth just watched it." "What was wrong with it?" I ask, just as Torrance yells, "It's not biased, it's science." Avery shrugs as though to say, "That. You know that and I know that," Seth says, "but the advertisers don't, and I'd rather not field a dozen angry phone calls about it." "We get angry phone calls whenever we talk about climate change. I report the weather. I can't not talk about it. I'm aware of that. But we have to be careful about how we do it. This is about all our viewers, not just the ones who agree with you." Well, the ones who don't are wrong. I'm firmly on Torrance's side. It's something we have to contend with every so often on social media, though not nearly as much as the comments we get about showing both too much and not enough skin. It's disheartening how many more people care about our bodies than rising ocean levels. Seth goes quiet, too quiet to hear. And then, "What if you cut out this part at the end, or?" A sharp laugh from Torrance cuts him off. "I know what's going on here. You're trying to get back at me for Friday. You're Emmy. That is blatantly untrue. I'm just doing my job, Tor. I don't think you are. I think you're trying to silence me to make yourself look like the big man here. So you can feel better about your pathetic little. And I'm done." With shaking hands, I push out my chair, making more noise than I intend as I shove to my feet and stalk out of the newsroom. My ears are ringing, my lungs tight. No one can see me like this, and if I stay in this room a second longer, I'm going to scream. When the door to the dugout opens and someone says, "In here," I'm in such a state that it takes me a moment to register the voice as Russell's. He opens the door wider, beckoning me inside. The dugout isn't super high-tech or anything, but it's quiet. There's Russell's desk, and those belonging to our other sports reporters and anchors, most of them strewn with sports equipment and memorabilia. The walls covered with jerseys and pennants and posters of athletes. Maybe there was something to Chris Torres's football theory. It's stunningly, blessedly empty. Thought maybe you needed to hide as much as I did. He gestures to a free chair at the empty desk next to his before leaning back in his own chair. He looks so casual here, so right. The kind of comfort I've never managed to grasp at the station. Everyone's out to lunch, but I had a story to finish up. I finally let out a breath, collapsing into the chair. He rolls over to me. Out there, my emotions were on the verge of taking over. In here, I'm safe. Thanks. Hey, he says, leaning forward, a little worry divot appearing between his brows, right above his glasses. Are you okay? I'm not sure yet. He reaches for a candy jar on his desk and holds it out to me. You guys really do have privacy in here, I say as I grab a handful. The sugar helps. A bit. All we have out there are our low partition workspaces. And those do approximately nothing to shield us from the hails. Somehow, I get the feeling you didn't come in here to talk feng shui. I crunch down on a mini Snickers. I am so fucking naive. At first, I'm surprised I say it out loud. I don't make a habit of swearing at work, and I don't do anything nearly as aggressive as the way my teeth are tearing apart this Snickers. It must be last week's drunken gripe fest that's made me okay talking to Russell like this. Letting him see a less polished version of Ari Abrams. Russell's brows crease again, his eyes growing concerned. They really are a brilliant shade of blue. What do you mean? Torrance apologized to me this morning. She got here early, told me how embarrassed she was about what happened at the party. She even said she'd take me to lunch, like we're friends, when we've never gone out to lunch together before. I shake my head and unwrap a Three Musketeers. I really let myself believe her. I get it. Even in here, sometimes I feel completely. He motions to the walls around us. Trapped. Trapped. That's exactly the right word for it. What we talked about on Friday, I start slowly. Is that still something you might be open to? We were both pretty plastered. I had the headache all weekend to prove it. He drapes his hand over a baseball on his desk, rolls it in a circle. But I'm serious about it if you are, Ari. I'm not used to hearing my name from him. It's always been Weather Girl, and there's something about my name that snags my attention. Something that turns me serious, if I wasn't already. I just want to not dread going to work, I say plainly. Yes, I'd love to be valued a little more. I'd love to take on some bigger weather stories. But I used to look forward to work all the time, which is maybe a weird thing to say when it requires getting up at what most people would consider an ungodly hour. But it's true. I love my job. I don't love the way Torrance and Seth run this station, and it's clear neither of them has plans to leave. Even if this means we spend more time around them and quite possibly lose our minds in the process. I want to at least try. I know you're not into sports, Russell says as he tosses the baseball once in the air before catching it. But that kind of sounded like you were a coach giving a halftime pep talk to a losing team. Hopefully it wasn't prophetic, then. He holds up a finger, one corner of his mouth quirking into a smile. But that's the great thing about sports. We love an underdog story. 6. Forecast. It's raining Gelt and Chardonnay. There's a limit to the number of times one can hear the dreidel song without losing one's mind. I hit that limit about a dozen I have a little dreidels ago, and yet I paste on my sunshine smile for my niece and nephew, who could probably keep playing until midnight without getting bored. I have a little dreidel, I made it out of. Cassie says from where she's sitting on the living room rug, a heap of Gelt and pennies spread between her and her brother. We're all wearing matching menorah light-up sweaters Alex got us for Hanukkah last year, and she keeps scratching at the collar of hers. Pizzadillas. Orion shouts, showing off his adorable jack-o'-lantern smile. He finally lost his first tooth over the weekend, and I can't remember ever being that proud of something. Oh, to be 5 again. What's a pizzadilla? I ask from the couch, where Javier and I have been both playing and refereeing the game. A quesadilla with a pizza on top. Orion gets so excited, he flings the dreidel across the room. I thought you were smart, Aunt Ari. I'm sorry. I should have known. My pizza knowledge is sorely lacking, I say as he scurries to collect the dreidel. You'll have to make them for me next time. Let's make them now. Cassie bounds up to me, her curly dark hair springing in all directions. The oversized menorah sweater hangs to the knees of her blue and white striped leggings. I'm going to make you the best one, but Papa will have to put it in the oven. Kiddo, we're not making anything. We just ate, Javier says, running a hand through Cassie's wild hair that matches his. And I think that's enough dreidel. Why don't we save some for the remaining 7 nights? Aunt Ari has to be up early in the morning. And that is entirely because the station doesn't respect Jewish holidays. I consider that for a moment. Although frankly, sometimes neither do I. It's a fine line to walk. One more round. Cassie gives her dad these pleading eyes that are impossible to resist. Please? They don't teach you how to say no to that face in parenting classes, Alex tells me as he heads into the room, drying his hands on his jeans. With glee, the twins grab the dreidel again. I have a little dreidel. I made it out of Aunt Ari's existential angst. Until Alex had kids, I was convinced I didn't want them, certain my genes would make me a terrible parent. But spending time with them has changed my mind completely. I'm not sure how many and I'm not sure when, but all I know is that I want this kind of family. I want this joy we didn't always have growing up. You look beat, Alex says to me as he settles into an armchair, stretching out his long legs. The shamash light on his sweater keeps flickering on and off, though he changed the batteries before dinner. Dreidel too intense for you? I'm fine, I insist. It's been my mantra lately. Fine that Garrison dumped me. Fine that Torrance would rather resurrect petty arguments than be a real boss. Again I summon that here's your weekend forecast smile. But even fine sounds forced when you have to insist that's what you are. So I amend it. I'm great. Really. And I'll be even better once I meet up with Russell tomorrow evening to discuss our plans. A couple hours before my usual bedtime, but it's definitely worth staying awake for. You lose, Orion informs us as the dreidel lands on Gimel and he takes all my gelt and Cassie's. You all lose. I pretend to pout. Oh no, again? You're a real high roller. Both Orion and Cassie burst into giggles, their little kid laughter soothing my soul just a fraction. It's always been a toss-up whether a holiday or birthday or other celebration would include my mother, depending on her mood that week. I assume Alex invited her, and it's almost a relief that she didn't show up. That's game. Javier collects the dreidel and transfers Orion's winnings to the coffee table. Cassie must be too hopped up on sugar. I brought a lot of gelt to contest Orion's victory. I'll take them upstairs if you two want to keep talking. That would be great, thanks, Alex says. The twins throw their arms around my neck, and I pretend they're hugging me too hard. You're too strong. I'm not sure how long I can last. I groan as if I'm in pain. This of course makes them laugh harder, hug tighter, and eventually I give in and squeeze them back. Happy Hanukkah, I say, ruffling their hair and dropping the kind of too loud kisses they pretend to hate on top of their heads. Make sure Cassiopeia has her water in the purple cup, Alex calls, and Javier holds it up, grinning. How do you even bring yourself to discipline them? I ask as the trio clomps upstairs, Cassie already telling Orion how she's going to get him back at dreidel tomorrow night. Oh, somehow we manage. I'm pushing my own bedtime again, but I think I needed this. Alex disappears into the kitchen and returns with 2 glasses of wine, watching as I gulp down half of one. Should I get you the whole bottle? I'm cutting myself off, I say as I pour his glass into mine. After this one. I was about to ask if it's been a long week, but it's only Monday. I wave my hand. Long week, long month, long year. Anything you want to talk about? My boss. As usual. When isn't it my boss? And thank you, but I'm dealing with it. Or I will be, with the ever-polite but still mysterious Russell Beringer. Tomorrow. Well then, Alex says, sliding onto the couch next to me, I wanted to talk to you about something. He plays with a frayed edge of a blanket, and, oh. Javier must have taken Cassie and Orion upstairs to give us some time alone. It's about Mom. I wish I could undo the visceral reaction this sparks in me. I hate that those 3 words conjure up the kind of anxiety that makes me want to sprint upstairs and hide in a child-sized bed. Okay. Alex takes a deep breath. She's at a psychiatric treatment center. A cold front rushes in, filling my brain with static. What? Is she okay? His expression softens, but his words remain serious. Ari. It's a good thing. Or, it's going to be, at least. She went to the yesterday after calling 911. The guy she was seeing, Ted? He broke up with her last week. And it brought all her emotions to the surface in a really extreme way. They told me she was having a panic attack when she called, and she was convinced she was going to die, and that she was going to die alone. He pauses to collect himself, running a hand down his freckled face. It sounded like she didn't think she could take care of herself. But she's safe now. That's the most important thing. Okay. She's okay. She's safe. I can barely process the rest of it because I can't quantify the number of times I've wanted my mother to get help. I can't visualize her in the kind of hospital I've only ever seen in medical dramas. It wasn't until I was an adult that I really understood something was wrong, and then it became so crystal clear. Hindsight. That precise and painful thing that made all the fragments of "that's just mom" click into place. In high school, when she was teaching me to drive and she broke down sobbing in the middle of the freeway because her boyfriend had dumped her via text. In middle school, when she shut herself in her room and refused to leave for 3 days, and I begged Alex to help me pick the lock because I didn't know if she was still alive. In elementary school, when our dad told her he couldn't be around her anymore, that she was bringing him down, and couldn't she just be happy for once in her goddamn life? For a few years after he left, he sent cards on our birthdays. The last one was for my bat mitzvah, and I didn't bother keeping it. When my mother was deep in one of those moods, it seemed like nothing brought her joy. Not her job, not family outings, not working in the garden, which she loved on her good days. If Alex and I were excited about something, she couldn't muster even a tenth of the enthusiasm. She used so many sick days, I was shocked she was able to keep her job, and she'd make snide remarks about my appearance I told myself she didn't really mean. Then there was the revolving door of boyfriends who ranged from scumbag to fixer, calling her hysterical, or batshit, or crazy. Alex and I learned how to be independent, how to cook if we needed to, how to use public transportation if she wasn't up to driving us somewhere. It wasn't all the time, which made it easier for us to pretend nothing was wrong. Sometimes she'd go weeks or months without an episode. She'd go back to gardening and we'd pile on the couch to watch a movie together and I'd think, this is okay. Everything's okay now. But then she'd swing right back. In high school, I started feeling off. Withdrawn. An acute sadness crept in that I could only occasionally attach to something specific. At first, it was easy to ignore because I was usually too worried about my mother. So I didn't tell anyone, just let it live alongside me and turn my world grayer. I went to therapy for the first time in college, the heaviness I'd lived with for a few years making it impossible to concentrate, despite how much I loved what I was studying. It scared me, how similar it looked to what my mother was going through, that for a while I assumed it had to be normal. I slept too much and had trouble making friends. I didn't know when it took root, only that I was having fewer and fewer good days in between bouts of hopelessness and lethargy. I didn't know if anyone in the campus clinic could help me, but at the very least, I figured I couldn't feel any worse than I already did. I just feel off, I told the therapist. I learned there was probably a name for what my mother was struggling with, even though she'd never been diagnosed, never talked to anyone, never taken medication. I learned that all the reasons I was furious with Amelia Abrams and found her emotionally draining to the point where I'd need 12 hours of sleep the next day to recover from a visit home, they were beyond her control, to a certain extent. She was suffering, too. But she wouldn't help herself. And then I learned that the thing weighing me down wasn't just an adjective, but a noun. Depression. I was clinically depressed, and I wasn't going to let it control me. My mother had always been against medication. She said it was because of the side effects, but she wouldn't even take Advil when she had a headache. But I wanted a life on the opposite end of the spectrum from my mother's, so I filled my prescription. It had been such a relief to have a name for it, until I came home for winter break and tried to explain it to her. Some part of me hoped she'd see herself in my diagnosis, that it might spark her to get help. We're all depressed, she said instead, brushing it off. The world is fucking awful. We just have to learn how to deal with it. I wouldn't let her pull me back under. For almost 10 years, I've been on meds and in therapy, and they've changed my life. It's a great place. I checked it out online, and it has solid reviews, Alex is saying, and I briefly imagine a Yelp for psychiatric hospitals. She wants to change, Ari. And you believe her. She's always wanted to. It's just taken her a while to get there. She's always wanted to. Those words send me into another spiral. When my first boyfriend dumped me after a homecoming dance because he thought I wasn't fun enough, and she asked what I'd done to drive him away. We're too much for them, she told me, and I believed her. When my college boyfriend, a guy named Michael I'd only been dating for a few weeks, dumped me because I spilled everything to him, my mother, therapy, my new antidepressants, and he said he wasn't ready to be in a serious relationship with me. From that point on, I vowed to keep it all hidden, to be the shiny happy person I became on TV. How do you know all of this? I ask, tugging a crocheted blanket around my legs. You've been talking about it with her? I'm, her emergency contact. Right. I stiffen, trying to tell myself I shouldn't feel hurt by this. He's the older sibling, after all. It's been gradual, letting her calls go to voicemail and leaving her texts unanswered for days at a time. She doesn't even know about my breakup yet. My current therapist, Joanna, advised making space so I can focus on myself, since she's so good at dragging me down. Even if sometimes I wish we had a relationship that enabled us to get margaritas or go to brunch together, it's not unusual for months to go by without hearing from her, and when she reappears, for it to only be with bad news. I want to support her, I say quietly. I want her to get better. I do. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time believing it. Why now, after all these years? What I don't say, we weren't enough for her. He nudges my foot with his latka patterned sock. The best we can do right now is be there for her, and be ready to keep supporting her when she comes home. She's taking personal leave from work. She's been at Boeing for decades, working her way up to a job as an executive assistant. This place has regular visitor hours, and I was thinking of going soon. I know it would mean a lot to her if you came, too. She still watches you, he continues. Almost every day. This is a lot to process. I pull the blanket tighter around myself, the emotion I've been fighting off for the past week threatening to surface. I'm not sure I can decide right now. I get that she's dealing with something huge, but she's been dealing with it for years, Alex. And we didn't matter enough to her for her to get help when we were kids, or when we were teens, or when we finally moved out of the house. So I'm sorry if I'm a little low on sympathy for her at the moment. I get it. He throws an arm around my shoulders and gives me a gentle hug. He's a good caretaker. A good dad. I get it, and it's shitty. Whatever you decide to do, I support you. 100%. I appreciate that, I say, meaning it. I'll let you know. After a few more minutes, Javier appears at the foot of the stairs. Cassie's demanding a bedtime story from her favorite aunt. You up for it? Of course, I say, and even though I hope it'll feel natural once I see my niece, I turn on the smile before I head upstairs. 7. Forecast. A gentle breeze of an evening interrupted by a sharp gust of reality. So we're really going to parent trap our bosses, I say, hoping it'll sound more believable once it's out of my mouth. Nope. Still absurd. We really are. Russell leans across the table at the Ballard Taqueria we picked because it's always busy and we didn't want anyone to overhear us. Look at this, he says, showing me his phone. It's an article from when Torrance was hired at KSEA, a fluff piece about the Hales' plans to revitalize the station. Proof that they were happy once. She and Seth are sitting at the anchor desk, looking not at the camera but at each other. It's not tough to fake a smile for the camera, but the joy in their eyes? The way Seth is gazing at her, all pride and adoration? That's real. Russell swipes to another photo. Is that a picture of them, swing dancing? Maybe it shouldn't be too much of a surprise, given the moves they busted out at the holiday party. In this photo, they look like they're from another era. Torrance's blonde hair in pin curls and Seth in a fedora. He's holding her in a dramatic dip, her back arched at what should be an impossible angle. The thought "are we really doing this?" has been running through my head on a near constant loop. Every time I wonder whether this is too manipulative, I remember what Torrance said the night of the party. Somewhere beneath the barbs and bravado are two people who used to be in love with each other. We're just going to give them a push. And if it's also a way to distract myself from what's happening with my mother, well, that's just a bonus. I crunch down on a tortilla chip and slide the phone back to Russell, who's in a green sweater beneath a deep caramel corduroy jacket with elbow patches. Combined with his rectangular glasses and stubble along his jaw, he looks like a professor who stays long past his office hours to make sure every one of his students understands the material because that's just how much he cares. We'll keep digging. After work, I took off my camera makeup and changed into jeans and a striped cardigan. It makes this feel less like a work meeting and more like, well, I'm not sure what to call it. A plot-a-thon? A scheme sesh? But I think we need to lay out what we know about them, so we can get a better sense of who they are. Russell opens up a notes app on his phone, motions for me to continue. I've worked for Torrance for 3 years, I say. She's good at what she does. Obviously. And she's passionate about weather and science. She loves doing charity work, mostly environmental causes. She likes flowers but prefers succulents. She only drinks oat milk because she doesn't do dairy and she's allergic to soy. On occasion, she will tolerate hemp milk. Her lipstick never budges or transfers, and before I die, I swear to God I will find out how she does it. I allow myself space to take a breath and keep racking my brain. She and Seth have one son, Patrick. I think he works in tech? His wife Roxanne is about to have a baby. That's a good start, Russell says as he types. What do we know about Seth? He likes to have a hand in everything going on in the newsroom, but sometimes he goes a little overboard. Gets too involved. Everything has to be just so, or he loses it. He dunks a chip in salsa. Let's see. He gets takeout from that Greek place on Vine at least once a week. Oh, and he loves Garamond, that's what all his signs are typed in. Like he thinks it'll make them less aggressive because Garamond is such an innocuous font. I do like Garamond. It's professional, but in a friendly way. I reach for another chip. So this is what we've got. Fonts and milk. A woman at the counter calls out our order number, and Russell hops up to grab our taco plates, with sides of black beans topped with cotija. For a few minutes, we eat in silence, save for the occasional sound of approval. That push we're going to give Torrance and Seth, we're going to have to use heavy machinery. Did you always want to cover sports? I ask once I've demolished my first taco, carne asada with a verde sauce so spicy it nearly makes me weep. Sure, this dinner isn't strictly for socializing, but this is the first time Russell and I have been out alone, not counting that night at the hotel bar, and I've been curious about him. This is my chance to learn what's beneath that modest professorial exterior. Actually, no, he says. I've always loved them, but I didn't think you could do something like this as a career. Like, getting paid to go to games? Sounds fake. But I liked writing, and I liked sports, and it wasn't until college that I took a sports journalism class and realized I might want to do it professionally. And you didn't start out in broadcasting, either. He shakes his head. I was covering sports for a paper in Grand Rapids, where I grew up. I wrote about high school sports at first, that's where most people start. I have to hold in a laugh. I'm sorry, I say. I'm imagining you at a high school football game, taking very serious notes while the homecoming king and queen ride out onto the field in a convertible. You laugh, but the single light bulb above our table glints off his glasses as he leans forward. My first season there, I did a story about the homecoming queen, who was also the starting quarterback. She took them to the state championships for the first time in the school's history. Sports, it's not just about the numbers. It's not just wins and losses, like weather isn't just about the little suns and clouds that pop up on screen. There are entire personalities and stories behind the players, and that's what I've always loved. It's about the people, more than anything. I'm not sure if I've ever thought about it that way, I say. But I like that. I didn't go to any football games in high school or college. The whole school spirit thing kind of missed me. It doesn't have to be solely motivated by school spirit. When you go as an adult, I'm guessing it's not because you're all rah-rah Seattle. Most people go for the atmosphere. I give him my guiltiest cringe. Holy shit. He pauses with a chip halfway to his mouth. You've never been to a sporting event. It's not that I don't like sports, I say quickly, not wanting to offend him. I didn't play any growing up and neither did my brother, and no one in our family watched anything. It wasn't part of the Abrams culture, I guess. Russell leans closer to place a sympathetic hand on my shoulder. Ari Abrams. This is an absolute tragedy. His hand is warm through the fabric of my shirt, and when he pulls back, I find myself wishing he'd lingered a few moments longer. We broke the touch barrier the night of the party, but something about this feels different. So you're telling me you've never been to a Sounders game? They're as unsports as sports can be.
Most people don't even go because they love soccer, they're just there to drink or eat garlic fries.
Wait, what? Garlic fries? No one ever told me about garlic fries. The best $8.25 you'll ever spend. When I gasp at this, he winces a little. Okay, yeah, they're way too expensive for fries, but the overpriced food is part of the whole experience. There's this infectious energy in a stadium I've never found anywhere else, all these people coming together for the same thing. You've convinced me. I'll go to a sports. He just shakes his head at me, his eyes crinkling at the edges when he grins.
I'm not sure I've noticed that about him before.
What about you? How'd you get into weather? It's mostly those little suns and clouds, I say, and this deepens his smile. I was one of those kids who was obsessed with storms. Any severe weather, really. I used to track it in a notebook, week by week, and try to make predictions. As I got older, I got more curious about the science behind it. The news can be so dark. So grim. And then I get to come on screen and be goofy and give people good news. News that might help them make immediate decisions. Like I told you during the party, I grew up watching Torrance, and what she did felt so powerful. I'm still awed by the elements, and all of us, no matter who we are, we have to obey. It can be terrifying, Russell agrees. We were used to snow in the Midwest, but one winter, we got 2.5 feet, and they still only shut down school for a few days. We're lucky in the Northwest. 10-year-old Ari would have been so jealous of you in Michigan. Our sprinkling of snow every other year was never enough for her. Honestly, it's not enough for adult Ari, either. I force myself to take a breath. Typical Ari Abrams. Waxing poetic about weather. Sorry. Am I talking too much about the weather? Russell lifts an eyebrow. I literally asked you about the weather. I know. Some people think it's small talk, that it's not, like, intelligent conversation or whatever. Or at least, I've been told that before. Anytime I was at a party with Garrison and someone said some weather we're having, I'd rush in with an explanation. I learned quickly that people didn't usually want the science behind it. And then some people think you're making a political statement about the Earth getting warmer, about the extreme weather we're experiencing more frequently than we ever have. Even though there's nothing about climate change that should be political, in my opinion. I'm relieved when he meets this with a firm nod. Not that I'd expect anything else, but I'd have some strong feelings about scheming with a climate change denier. 100%, he says. And hey, sometimes games get delayed or cancelled because of the weather. What you do directly affects what I do. It affects everyone, really. Right. I say, waving a tortilla chip for emphasis and accidentally flinging salsa onto my sleeve. I've heard people say it takes zero effort to do the weather, that the station could put anyone up there to deliver a forecast, and the implication is that it's unimportant. But nothing could be further from the truth. A grin starts in one corner of his mouth and slowly spreads across his face. I realize my cheeks are warm, a side effect of getting so animated about this topic. You're giving me a look. I am talking too much about the weather. I knew it. I'll stop. My brother says I have a tendency to get emotional about rain. With a fingertip, I graze the lightning bolt at my collar. And he's not wrong. Ari, Russell says, laughing. There's this lovely openness on his face when he does it, and it makes me wonder whether he's been holding himself back every other time he's laughed with me. No, please don't. It's just, your expression completely changes when you talk about it. I can tell it's more than just a job to you. It's not just that you're excited about it. It's your passion. Now I feel my chest bloom with a different kind of heat. However, I must look right now. I want to tell him he looked the same when he was talking about sports. Is Ari short for anything? He asks. Ariel. Why are you making that face? I sigh, unscrunching my nose. Because even though it's Ril, everyone thought it was Ariel. Like the Little Mermaid. I hold up a strand of my red hair, which has rejected the straightening I subjected it to for the camera. You would not believe how many kids in elementary school asked me where my fins were, or started singing, Under the Sea, when they saw me. It was easier to go by Ari. I like both, he says. And you're safe, because I can guarantee you don't want to hear me sing. This is fun, plotting to get our bosses back together, even if we haven't mentioned either of them in the past 20 minutes. Aside from Hannah, I don't really have work friends at KSEA, and I've missed this kind of conversation with the friends Garrison took with him after the breakup. But Russell Beringer and we could be friends. We talk more about Torrance and Seth, making some plans for low-level espionage. Most of it will have to wait until after the new year. We're going to have to get them together outside of work, Russell says. You just moved into a new place, right? What about a housewarming party? In my studio apartment? I respect my possessions too much. I consider it for a moment. But you're right. We need to force proximity the shit out of them. It's just too bad we don't have a camping trip or anything like they do in the movie, though I guess that was more to scare away their potential new stepmom. No, he says. But we do have the KSEA retreat next month. You're going on that, right? I nod. It's a mix of people every year, since the station can't exactly function with all of us gone. It'll almost be like being on vacation, and who doesn't want to fall in love on vacation? In a way, all this scheming makes me feel a little powerful. Garrison thought I was too sunshine? Not real enough? Well, here's my edge. That TV version of myself, the one he thought I never turned off, wouldn't be going behind her boss's back like this, even if it were for the greater good.
We're down to only Chip crumbs when his phone rings.
It's been on the table between us, but we've barely glanced at our phones, let alone reached for them. When he sees who's calling, though, he picks it up. Sorry, I've got to take this, he says, his mouth set in a firm line. A server swings by the table and swaps our empty basket for a new one, the chips fresh from the fryer and glistening with salt. I mouth thank you to him, trying not to overhear Russell's conversation, even though it's happening 2 feet in front of me. Of course. I can be there in 20. Hang tight. He hangs up, smoothing out the collar of his jacket with his free hand. That was my daughter. She has play practice after school, and I guess she's not feeling well, and… The rest of his sentence is lost as my mind tries to make sense of this new information.
Your daughter.
Elodie. She's 12. He signals to the server for the check. I just stare at him. He barely looks older than I am. How can Russell Beringer, KSEA sports reporter, have a 12-year-old kid? Named Elodie? When I'm quiet for a beat too long, he says, oh no. I hope you don't think I'm like, the worst father ever, getting drunk with you at the holiday party. She was at her mom's that weekend, and I don't usually go out even when she's not there. I never drink that much, and never in front of her, and… No, I wasn't thinking that at all. I swear. That's awesome. Wow. Congratulations. I sputter out. Because congratulating someone on their 12-year-old child is super normal. Hallmark definitely sells cards for that. Congrats on keeping a human alive for a decade. Thank you? I clap a hand over my mouth. Oh my God. That thing I said. About DILFs. I'm so sorry. I hope that didn't offend you or anything. I need to stop talking. A bolt of lightning can strike me down any time, even though the odds of that happening to someone in any given year are about 1 in a million, according to the National Weather Service. No, not at all. I mean, you had to tell me what it meant, so. He trails off, rubs the back of his neck as crimson attacks his cheeks. We'll continue this soon? Right. Yeah, I say, still reeling. I hope your daughter is okay. He gives me a tight smile, and then he's gone. 8. Forecast. Clear skies and attempted optimism to kick off the new year. Last year, I spent Christmas with Garrison's family in a postcard-perfect cabin on the Washington coast. We'd just gotten engaged, a moonlit walk through our neighborhood when he stopped to tie his shoe and then produced the box with that heirloom ring inside, and we were drunk on each other, drunk on the idea of our futures intertwined. Most guys I dated weren't Jewish, and even though I'd spent 2 Christmases with the Burks, the rock on my finger turned me newly awkward around them. Eggnog lattes and Santa-shaped pancakes with his nieces and nephews and his parents asking, "How's your mother?" and my pinched answers. Hounding us about when they were going to get more grandchildren, but really, whenever you're ready. As long as it's soon. Which made me feel more like a pair of ovaries than an actual human woman. They even gave us a teeny stocking for our future mini Burke. Though when I told his parents I was planning to keep my last name, they pretended they hadn't heard me. I looked for bright sides all along the coast, forcing a smile so wide it made my jaw ache. They'll be different once we're married. Probably not. Maybe next year they'll care that I'm Jewish. Unlikely. At least the pancakes were good. Okay, I could cling to that one. Whenever Garrison asked me if anything was wrong, I told him no and kept right on grinning. This year, at least I don't have to pretend I like eggnog. Hanukkah is over, and I take advantage of the holiday pay to work both Christmas Eve and Christmas. When you're Jewish in the media industry, everyone assumes you'll work on December 25th, which is maybe not a great assumption to make, but I don't hate the extra money in my bank account. Even with my depression at manageable levels, every so often, I have a dark day. A day where everything feels heavy, the smallest tasks become impossible, and my brain can only conjure worst-case scenarios. I'll be miserable at this station forever. Or Torrance will find out what Russell and I are planning and make sure. I never work in this industry again. My mom will reject all the help she's getting. I'll never have a meaningful connection with another person. As obvious as it sounds, I just feel really fucking sad. And while I can try to distract myself or reach out to my therapist, sometimes I have to let the fog run its course, the logical part of my brain knowing I won't feel this way forever. In past relationships, I did my best to hide my dark days. I'd make a spa appointment I couldn't afford, or I'd say I had errands to run and get in my car and just drive. Even if sometimes just driving meant grabbing Taco Bell and sitting in a parking lot for hours trying not to cry because I couldn't summon the energy to turn the car back on. Most of the time, I don't want to be around anyone, because forcing a smile on a dark day is a little like trying to turn concrete into gold. Unfortunately, this dark day coincides with a text from Garrison. 2 days after a Christmas I spend at a Chinese restaurant with my brother's family, my ex asks me to come over and collect some stuff. I'm tempted to reply with Torrance's "maybe later" gif, but instead I trudge from Ravenna to Upper Queen Anne, intent on getting in and out as fast as possible. But looking for parking on my old street feels inexplicably heartbreaking. Sometimes it took half an hour to find a spot, and we'd circle and circle because no way were we paying $200 per month to park in the building's garage. I never thought I'd reminisce over struggling to find parking, but here I am. As soon as he opens the door and lets me inside, I want to melt into the plush carpet, use the macrame rug as a blanket, splay my body on top of the walnut credenza. The idea of having enough space for a credenza suddenly seems revolutionary. God, I loved this apartment. So many of my touches are still here, and it hits me that we haven't been broken up for that long. Of course the wall hanging I found at the Fremont Flea Market is still up, the arched brass floor lamp not yet replaced. Garrison kept this place because he could afford a 2-bedroom and I couldn't. We talked about buying a house after we were married, but we were reluctant to potentially leave this place behind. I might miss our apartment more than I miss him, which is at the very least a sign I'm moving on. Garrison is tall and white, with floppy dark hair and dark eyes that make him look like standard-issue attractive male, aged 25 to 34. A small mole beneath his left cheekbone. A cleft in his chin I used to poke my thumb into because it made him laugh. "Hey," he says, sounding much softer than he did over text. "You look really great." He's lying. I just spent 15 minutes walking up a hill after finding parking. My hair is a wind-blown mess and my breasts feel superglued to my bra. The nostalgia evaporated in about 10 seconds, annoyance taking its place. I'd love one of those overpriced spa days right about now. I'm parked in a loading zone. I can't stay long. Parking around here is still shit, sorry. The sheepishness in his voice tugs at my heart. There were good times, too, though it's harder to remember them the further I am from the breakup. We'd load the car with snacks and go to drive-in movies during the summer, making out in the backseat until someone forced us to leave, and then we'd giggle at being caught like lovesick teens. He'd pop an allergy pill and we'd go to a cat cafe, sipping lattes with kittens in our laps. Wherever we were, if anyone recognized me from TV, he'd glow with pride. "It's so cool that people know you," he'd say. "Is that it?" I ask when he hands me a box with some kitchen supplies and other knickknacks inside. The remainder of my dark day agenda is waiting for me at home. Weighted blanket, reality TV, Kraft macaroni with 2 cheese packets instead of 1. Thinking about it makes me somehow feel better and worse at the same time. Yep. Wait, you don't have to go just yet, do you? He looks so forlorn as he says it that my shoulders sag, and I place the box on the floor. I was hoping we could talk a little. Nothing about that sounds like a good idea. Nothing at all sounds like a good idea except for processed cheddar. But because apparently being back here has cut out my spine, I follow him over to the couch. He asks if I want anything to drink and I tell him no, though I regret not requesting hard alcohol as soon as he picks up my hand and says, "I've missed you, Ari."
His thumb rubs a gentle circle on my palm, and I let him.
"How have you been?" "Really? Not bad," I croak out. The sensation of his skin on mine is too distracting. I've missed being touched like this. I've missed being touched, period, and depression brain tells me I haven't deserved to be. "Not gonna lie, part of me was hoping you'd tell me you've been completely miserable for the past couple months," he says. "But I guess that's how you've always been." Determined to look on the bright side. There's nothing wrong with that. Although I've been wondering lately just how much of that brightness the hails block out. He's quiet for a moment, and then reaches over to sift his other hand through my hair, naturally wavy today. "Maybe you're right. Maybe. We could all use a little more bright side. It happened so quickly, I'm not sure how to process it." One moment, there's a good couple feet between us. The next, his hands are cupping the sides of my face and I'm clutching at his collar and he's on top of me, pressing me down into the couch that we have done this on too many times to count. His mouth is hot on mine, too eager, just like the bulge in his pants. It's immensely gratifying, knowing how instantly turned on he is, and it dials my self-esteem all the way up to 11. "No one else will want you," depression brain says. "At least he already knows about all your issues. And he didn't want me, either. You feel so good," he says beneath my ear, and thank God, the sound of his voice wakes me up. My spine grows back. Seeing Garrison again has tangled my emotions so thoroughly that I can't stick to a single decision. My trains of thought are on 100 different tracks racing toward 100 different stations. But this can't happen, not after he made me feel so terrible about myself, forced me to question the one thing that's protected me all these years. This would only make my dark day worse, and I'd wake up tomorrow unable to leave my bed. My lungs are tight as I place a hand on his chest and push. When gentle doesn't work, I use more force. I can't do this. Garrison draws back onto his heels, face twisted in frustration. Are you serious? Yes. Breathing hard, I get to my feet, smoothing out my sweater and combing a hand through my hair. You're the one who broke up with me, remember? Because I wasn't real enough for you. Whoa, 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 he says. This wasn't me trying to get back together with you. It was just physical. I scoff at that, because I'd love for it to be just physical. I'd love nothing more than to text him every Friday night to come over and go down on me for a solid 15 minutes, zero emotional attachment. But if I have any hope of moving on, I can't do that. It doesn't matter. Even just physical is going to be a mistake. Is that real enough for you? I grab my box of things, leaving him on the couch with mussed hair and a raging hard-on. Happy New Year, I say from the hallway before I shut the door. When I get back to my car, there's a parking ticket wedged between the windshield wipers. I turn the remaining days of the year into an exorcism. I try on my entire closet and donate anything that reminds me of him, a dress he loved or an accessory he bought me. The only exception is a pair of jeans he said made my ass look incredible because, well, they do. I'm leaving him in December because I can't leave him back at Halloween, and I can't carry him with me into January. This year, I'm going to be good to myself. I'm going to do things differently. I'll go on a date and get back out there, queen. The way every millennial lifestyle website is telling me to. Maybe I'll learn how to do this casually and I'll be okay with Friday nights alone, the way my mother so rarely was. If I'm casually dating, I don't have to tell anyone about my family or my prescription or my dark days. Because even if Garrison threw all of that into question, I still have no idea how to talk about it with someone. On the third date? The seventh? Right before you sleep with someone? It's never felt right, never felt natural, and that makes me think it's never going to. So I reinstall the app Garrison and I matched on, the one I deleted a few weeks into our relationship. And when Alex texts me asking if I'm free to see our mother after the KSEA retreat next week, it must be the newer version of myself who responds, okay. I decline a New Year's Eve invitation from him in favor of self-care. I've never eaten in a restaurant by myself that wasn't fast casual, but I make a reservation at my favorite Italian place and simply shake my head when the server asks, "Are we waiting for one more?" No, I say. Just me. I force myself to leave my phone in my bag to savor the atmosphere and the independence. And it's kind of great, no pressure to talk as I listen to a string quartet play Sinatra. Only once, in between courses, do I pull out my phone and find a Happy New Year text from Russell. I parrot it back and add a few emojis, but I hesitate before I hit send. The revelation about his daughter threw me. I'm ashamed to admit I scoured social media afterward, but I couldn't find any of his profiles. Smart of him, frustrating for me. Still, he's not married, I'm pretty certain of that. No ring, no mention of a spouse. Then again, this was the first I'd heard of his daughter. I push him out of my mind. This could be the year of casual dating, learning how to be single, having dinner by myself. So I order a double chocolate torte for dessert, and I scrape the plate clean. The first day of the new year, I sign up for a Costco membership and buy a 64-pack of AAA batteries. 9. Forecast. Freezing temperatures and warm gooey feelings. We start small. At our GM's 75th birthday, the one he declined to attend, I learned that Torrance and Seth happened to be the only people at the station with a deep and abiding love for carrot cake. I even wondered if Torrance, who planned the party, ordered it just because she knew no one else would eat it. Our first day back in the office, Russell orders one from a downtown bakery, propping it up in the kitchen with a note that reads Happy New Year, beneath a doodle of a TV wearing a party hat. There's carrot cake in the kitchen, I tell Torrance with a knock on her half-open door, while Russell does the same thing with Seth down the hall. Bonding over their favorite food, it's got to put them in a good mood. Later that week, I spend an afternoon at a greenhouse picking out the most attractive and least fussy succulent I can find. The woman loves plants, but the less she has to water them, the better. It's not cheap, but it'll be worth it. I schedule a delivery and don't include a card. That's a nice succulent, Seth says the next day when it shows up, leaning against the wall outside Torrance's office. It's exactly what someone who anonymously sent a plant to her would do, and I send him 1,000 mental thank yous. It is. Torrance rearranges some of her pots to find a place for it on her desk. I can tell it's taking every ounce of restraint not to ask him whether he sent it. The problem, though, is that we're not close enough to either of them to know how they're really reacting. Whether any of this is making an impact. At the end of the week, after a near-constant exchange of ideas over text and email, we get lucky. I loop a scarf tighter around my neck, shivering inside my puffy coat as I scan the rows of seats in the arena. Russell waves me over, and I mutter, "Sorry, sorry," as I climb over legs and bags and foamy cups of beer to get to him. "You made it," he says with a grin. His hair spills out of his knit hat, curling over the top of his glasses. He's not quite as bundled up as I am, probably because he's more used to the cold. "I was worried for a moment that you'd changed your mind. Or that you'd gotten lost. I took my niece and nephew to see Frozen on ice here." I take the seat next to him and rub my mittened hands together. Which in retrospect was a little redundant. I didn't think my first foray into sports would happen so quickly, but the game presented itself as a golden opportunity to get to know one half of the Hales, the half I know less about. Seth has 2 pairs of season tickets he's in the habit of sharing with the sports desk, and Russell jumped at his latest offer. I assumed it wouldn't be very busy the week of New Year's, but the arena is packed. The whole place buzzes with restless energy, tinged with the salt of stadium food and the brine of beer, and I can't deny it's contagious. "Just know that if you call it sports ball, you have to go sit in the nosebleeds," Russell says. I wouldn't dare. "But what about ice ball? While you're at it, you should yell, 'Go Edmonton!' Especially when Seth gets back." I tap my nose. "Got it." Seth returns to our section with a buddy of his, a guy named Walt whom he introduced as my oldest friend, after which Walt ran a hand through his thinning gray hair and pretended to be wounded. "What do you think, Ari?" Seth says, nestling his beer into a cup holder on Russell's other side. "Russ said it was your first hockey game?" "It's cold, I admit," which gets a couple duh laughs. "Really, though, I'm excited. Thanks so much for bringing us." "I'll be right back," Russell says, and I stand to give him an easier exit. With an empty seat between us, Seth tips his beer at me and gives me an awkward nod. A tight smile. "Everything going all right for you at the station?" he asks. The go-to conversation topic for coworkers who've had no reason to spend time together outside of work until now. "Yep. It's great." "Good," he says. "And you're on that billboard up on Aurora?" "Exciting stuff." I nod so vigorously I worry my hat will fly off. I don't know why people think weather is the worst small talk. Coworkers with nothing in common, so they by default talk about work, that's the worst. Russell reappears with 2 spiked hot chocolates and an order of garlic fries, steam rising from the basket and smelling fantastic. I'm not sure who's more relieved, Seth or me. Probably Seth, who draws Walt into a debate about one of the players. "They definitely didn't have these at Frozen on ice," I say, marveling at the basket of golden, garlic-flecked goodness. "You are amazing." "Thank you. I just really wanted you to have a good time. This is like a big deal, being part of your first game." This might sound corny, but I'm kind of honored. There's a little self-consciousness in the way he says it, and it endears him to me in a way I wasn't expecting. I tug off one of my mittens and reach for an overpriced fry, brushing his gloved hand in the process. A gloved hand should not send a shock of electricity up my spine. He has a kid, I remind myself. A 12-year-old named Elodie. If I hadn't been such a disaster that evening at the taqueria, I'd have told him it's a beautiful name. "My first sports," I say, dipping the fry into ketchup. "And we don't even have to worry about the weather. Russell, bless him, tries his best to explain the game to me as the players take the ice and an announcer calls their names. "Those two at the red line are the centers," he says. "And what they're doing now, that's called a face-off. It's how they start every period and every time someone scores. The puck is dropped directly between the two centers, and after a brief clashing of sticks, Seattle takes control and bats it back toward another one of their players, the crowd erupting into cheers. It's a raucous, fast-paced game, almost dizzying. More than a few times, I lose my eye on the puck. What position did you play?" I ask Russell. "Goalie." He points at Seattle's goal. "That shaded blue area in front of the goal, that's called a crease. The goalie is allowed to do their job there without interference from any opposing players. A lot of goalies are bigger guys. You have to be quick and flexible, too." He trails off as one of our players takes a shot on Edmonton's goal and misses, which is met with a collective awe from the arena. You have no idea how excited I was when we finally got a hockey team in Seattle. I'd resigned myself to it never happening and needing to go up to Vancouver to catch games, so this is really incredible. It's very cute, how nerdy he gets about hockey. The way he can recite not just stats but all these details about the players, like how Seattle center Dmitry Akentyev always sleeps in a jersey from the opposing team the night before a game and Edmonton goalie Bo Madigan eats exactly 2 snickerdoodle cookies before taking the ice. Plenty of people love sports, I'm aware of that. But I'm not sure how many watch a game the way Russell does, like he's holding his breath, quietly urging his team forward. He's not rowdy or belligerent, but calm. Focused. Still, I'm aware that as much as we're getting to know each other, there's a huge piece of his life I know nothing about. A few times, I come close to asking about Elodie, but I don't want him to think I'm prying or judgy. I'm just curious, eager to know more about this guy I've committed to matchmaking our bosses with. If Russell and I are friends, it's perfectly fine that he happens to be cute. A harmless newsroom crush. Is Torrance a hockey fan? Russell asks at the intermission between the first and second periods. Edmonton is up 1-0. All around us, people are stretching their legs, heading to get more food. Seth's just returned from grabbing a hot dog, but Walt isn't back yet. Loves it, Seth says. We used to go all out, painting our faces, getting dressed up. He takes a bite of his hot dog, and I'm impressed he manages to do this without getting mustard in his mustache. I try to imagine the two of them at a game together, and I can't help it, a laugh slips out. Seth pauses between bites of his hot dog. Sorry. I'm picturing Torrance dressed like that guy. I point to a fan a few rows down, face painted green, batting his wild blue wig out of the way as he goes to town on a pretzel. It's just, I've worked with her for 3 years, and I still feel like I barely know her. Except for, well, everything that goes on between the two of you. And even that is a mystery. I do my best to sound as casual as I can. None of what I've said is a lie, which makes me feel slightly less Machiavellian. Still, I'm not in the habit of grilling people for information, especially about their personal lives. Anytime I'm reporting a man on the street weather story, the questions are all softballs. What do you think about all this rain? How does this affect your weekend plans? All the fighting? Seth says. I nod slowly, bracing myself for him to shut down this conversation. Instead, his dark eyes soften. You don't have to tiptoe around it. I know what we're like. He polishes off his hot dog and reaches for his beer. Is it pretty bad? He winces, waiting for our verdict. Everything in me is crying out to tell him that no, it's not that bad. Avoid conflict at all costs. Well, Russell starts, and I can see the indecision march across his features. Seth is his boss. He's not about to insult him to his face. His silence, however, seems to speak loud enough for Seth. Seth drags a hand down his face, the sharp angles of his jaw and graying stubble. At work, he's so polished that I can't quite believe this is the same person. That version of Seth would never admit fault. The arena beers are doing some heavy lifting. Shit, he mutters. I guess it's possible we've been too much lately. We'll tone it down. Sometimes it's easy to pretend we're in our own little world, huh? I think I'm a bit, he laughs, as though unable to believe he's saying this, a bit embarrassed. You shouldn't be, I start, before I can catch myself. You don't have to sugarcoat it, Ari. Seth gazes out at the rink, and maybe it's really dawning on him how rough it's been for the rest of us. I want our employees to like coming to work. To feel at ease in the office. Can you honestly tell me that's true? I love what I do. I say it emphatically, no forced sunshine necessary. Russell immediately backs me up. Absolutely. But sometimes, the station itself, well, it's not always the most welcoming atmosphere. Jesus. It must all seem so childish. Sometimes I wonder if we'd worked things out. He cranes his neck to look beyond our row, as though silently willing Walt to return and save him from this conversation. Look. I've probably already said too much. We all work together, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable with her. You're not, I say as gently as I can. His expression has changed, and I think I might recognize it. So I take a leap. I know what it's like when something ends and it isn't your choice. When you're still invested, but the other person is just done. That happened to you, too? I was engaged. Until 3 months ago. I can see now that maybe it should have ended earlier, but when we broke up, it was a complete surprise. I'm sorry. Seth really does look it. Relationships are fucking complicated, he says in this way that manages to sound profound. I'll drink to that. Russell raises his cup of beer, and we all take a sip. My confession buoys Seth, seems to make him more comfortable. Tor was the one who wanted the divorce, he says. I wanted to work things out. To try harder. But I had no fucking idea how.
It takes everything in my power not to flick my gaze over to Russell. Torrance wanted the divorce. This is huge. I'm painfully curious what things needed to be worked out, but we're making progress, and I don't want to ruin it by pressing too hard on a bruise. Did you? I ask. Try. A guilty look from Seth. Barely. I wanted to, sure, but I didn't have the right tools. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got my ass to therapy. It's the toughest and most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I think I had to do it for myself first. His fist clenches around a napkin, then loosens. I sure as hell didn't make things easy for her back then, but I've changed. I'm not the same man I was 5 years ago. This conversation is starting to prove that. He can speak openly about therapy, while I'd never been able to. Maybe it's the alcohol loosening him up, but this version of Seth is different. Aware. Heartbroken. That realization must make me brave. And you want her to know that you've changed. I say. Because, the signs probably aren't helping. Yeah. You're not wrong, he says with a sigh. But we've gotten into this pattern. One of us provokes the other, and the other reacts. It isn't that I don't know the signs are bullshit. Trust me, I feel like a dick every time I put one up. But there's something about knowing just how to get underneath someone else's skin. So it's a way to talk to her, Russell says. Probably not the best way, but at least she's talking. Even if most of the time, she's yelling. At least if she's reacting, well, part of me thinks it's because she still cares. It's a relief, almost, that we still have that. What exactly are you saying? Russell asks slowly, and my heart lifts. It's very possible our mighty news director is telling us he wants to get back together with his ex. Seth takes another sip of beer. It's not easy, he says, to keep loving someone who's given up on you. Maybe she hasn't. I fill my words with hope. It's not a lie if I believe it's true. If you wanted to change things, if that's something you wanted to do, I mean, what if you aired Torrance's crab story? Isn't it worth it, making viewers a bit mad, if it'll make Torrance happy? If you're meant to be with her, isn't it worth bending a little? I'll think about it, Seth relents, and it feels like a tiny victory. I had no idea this sensitive man was buried beneath those Garamond font signs. It could be a start, at least. Walt returns from concessions with a pretzel and another cup of beer. Hell of a line back there, he says. When the second period starts, I try my best to focus because I really do like the game, but all I can think about is this revelation from Seth. He wants her back. He wants her back, and he's been trying to change. Soon the score is tied, and when Seattle sinks another goal to bring us up to 2-1, Russell's hand drops to my knee. It's a soft, victorious gesture, one that communicates yes, our team scored, and maybe I can barely feel it through the fleece-lined tights I'm wearing beneath my jeans, but every cell in my body focuses on those few inches of denim. I swallow hard, wondering how it's possible that a hand on my knee is enough to make me warmer beneath all these layers than I've been the whole game. It's so loud that he has to lean in, putting his mouth right next to my ear. "You having a good time?" he asks. "Absolutely," I say in a strained voice I don't recognize as my own. Finally, he seems to notice the placement of his hand, because he glances down and moves it away. A flush spreads across his cheeks. Maybe he thought it was his own knee. Maybe the warmth I felt was simply that I overdressed. Seattle wins, 3-1, and I allow myself to get swept up in the chaos as we weave through the arena, everyone yelling and whooping, strangers hugging and high-fiving. "I can see why you love it so much," I tell Russell when we step outside, his glasses immediately fogging up. The city has turned dark, the nearby bars filling up with fans. I feel kind of victorious. Even though I had no impact on the game. Yeah. Russell pulls off his glasses to swipe the lenses with the fringed end of his scarf, and it is maybe the cutest thing I have seen an adult man do. "You really liked it." "I really did." A sloppy Seth stumbles toward us and throws an arm around each of our shoulders. "My hockey crew," he yells, and I don't know whether to laugh or to cower from embarrassment. "You guys are the best. We have to do this again." "Definitely," I say, struggling to keep my balance. "Now let's get you home." 10. Forecast. Rock step, triple step, and a lightning strike attraction. Quote. And would you look at that, I think he's smiling. Well, I think we can all agree that Bobo the primate pianist really gives new meaning to the phrase, monkeying around. David Wong and Gia Diangelo share the kind of laugh perfected by news anchors who have reported on too many heartwarming, slightly ridiculous animal stories to count. Up next, one of the fastest growing sports in the United States might be the one with the silliest name, Gia says. That sport. Pickleball. It's been a while since I watched a show in the studio, but on Friday, I make an exception. KSEA isn't big enough to have a studio audience, so I'm standing behind the cameras, doing my best to stay out of everyone's way. I remember playing that as a kid in gym class, David says, pretending to bat away an imaginary ball. And I don't think I was very good. Unlike most of these folks we're going to be hearing from next. Professional pickleball has been picking up steam, especially here in the Northwest, where we're always looking for indoor sports during those wet winter months. Russell Beringer has more. The story opens with a few thwacks of the pickleball on an indoor court. And then Russell's voiceover. You may not see it in the Olympics yet, but pickleball is a rapidly growing sport with legions of devoted players. The sound of his voice makes me bite back a smile. After we got Seth safely into an Uber, Russell mentioned this story would be airing today, and how excited he'd been about the chance to do some field reporting that wasn't a college game. Russell explains that pickleball is local to Washington State, invented on Bainbridge Island in 1965. He interviews a few players and the manager of a pickleball league, interspersed with B-roll of people playing. They even let me take a turn on the court, he says, and the camera cuts to Russell in athletic shorts and a t-shirt, two things I've never seen him in at work.
I force my gaze away from his calf muscles, as though everyone in the studio can tell exactly where I'm looking. Okay, so you're going to want to hold it like this, the league manager is telling him. A ball sails Russell's way, and he misses, laughing good-naturedly. Guess there's a bit of a learning curve. It's endearing, the way he isn't instantly perfect at it, that he was okay committing this to film. It would have been so easy to write this off as a fluff story, and maybe that's what people in their living rooms are doing right now, scoffing, changing the channel, switching to one of our competitors. But it would be wrong to pass that kind of judgment. Watching him, I see what he was saying about the personalities behind the players. The league manager who met her husband playing pickleball, and after he passed away, established this league in his honor, which she runs with the help of her kids. Every year on his birthday, they throw a massive pickleball tournament that draws players from all over the world. It's a testament to the power of recreation to create community, just as Russell says at the end of the piece. After a commercial break, it's time for Hailstorm, which is the reason I'm here. Torrance is in the best mood after it airs, and armed with what we know about Seth, I'm going to need her in good spirits. It's got to help that Seth hasn't posted any signs this week. There's her too catchy intro music I find myself humming every so often, playing over an animation of a cartoon Torrance caught in a storm, umbrella turning inside out and nearly getting whisked away before the sun appears. Hailstorm, which is Torrance's platform to analyze climate trends and bring on meteorology experts as guests, is a 30-minute segment, which seemed short to me when I was a kid and always wanted more. Today she's talking about the long-term effects of wildfires on our region. They've been growing worse each year, to the point where during the summer, the smoke is so thick that we're advised not to go outside for sometimes an entire week, or longer. With her usual magnetism, she manages to communicate how terrifying this is, interviewing a woman who lost 2 houses to wildfires a year apart and wrapping up with how viewers can volunteer to help. That was really powerful, I say to Torrance as she walks off the stage. I hope it makes people care about the fires year-round, and not just during the summer, she says. Haven't you been here since 3 a.m.? Aren't you exhausted? You can go home, Abrams. I know. Like I rehearsed, I hide a yawn with the back of my hand, though I stole a nap before the afternoon show. I'm trying to tweak my sleep schedule so I can go swing dancing tomorrow night. Torrance pauses as we reach the newsroom. Swing dancing? I didn't know you swing danced. I love swing dancing. I've only been doing it for a few months, so I'm not amazing, but I'm obsessed. Over at Century Ballroom in Capitol Hill. Ha. Her eyebrows knit together. East Coast swing, right? Not West Coast? East Coast and Lindy Hop, I say, like I didn't just look up the differences between them last night after studying that old photo of Torrance and Seth on the dance floor. The one they looked so happy in. I used to go all the time, but it's been a while, she says. I'm surprised we've never discussed it. Maybe because we never discuss anything. I follow Torrance into her office, trying to disguise the joy I feel when I spot the succulent on her desk.
That's really gorgeous.
With a fingertip, she grazes one of its violet-green leaves. It's the strangest thing. Showed up without a card. No idea who it's from. She drops her hand and takes a seat. Seth used to send me succulents all the time. Never flowers, they didn't last long, and I could never keep up with the watering. Then she laughs this off, like the thought is absurd. But I doubt it's from him. Probably one of the interns, trying to butter me up so I'll write them a recommendation. What were we saying about swing dancing? Right. You should come tonight, I say. We could make a whole thing of it, even. Get the whole station involved. Plenty of us will be on the retreat next week. There's no such thing as too much team bonding. It's a miracle, how I'm able to fight a cringe as I'm saying it. Years of smiling on TV have prepared me for this moment. Okay then, she says, cherry lips curving into a grin. Go ahead. Send out an all-staff email. I don't think they're coming, Russell says, rubbing his hands together to keep warm. We're standing outside Century Ballroom in Capitol Hill, next to an ice cream shop with lines down the block even on cold winter nights. It's been in the low to mid-40s all week, dropping into the upper 30s in the evening. Torrance seemed moderately excited, I say, trying to sound more confident than I feel. She'll show up any minute. And if Seth is as in love with her as he said he was, hopefully he will, too. Ari. Someone calls, and while I brighten at the sight of Hannah and Nate, I'm also disappointed it's not either Hale. A few other people from the station are already inside. Thanks so much for organizing this. We've always wanted to try this place, and this was exactly the nudge we needed. Hannah's going to make us all look bad, though, Nate says. She danced for 12 years as a kid. He turns to Russell, holds out his hand. I don't think we've met. I'm Nate, Hannah's less talented half. Russell. Hannah lifts her brows at me regarding Russell, and I give her a swift shake of my head. No need to fuel the office rumor mill, especially when there's nothing going on. We'll see you inside, I say with a wave. A few minutes later, a petite woman in a polka dot dress appears at the door. We're about to start, she says. If you're waiting for someone, I'm afraid they'll have to join us during the social dance afterward. Glumly, I follow Russell inside, hand over $10, and check my coat. The first hour of the dance is a lesson. Since Torrance and Seth already know how to dance, they're probably skipping it. That has to be it. I tuck my necklace into the t-shirt I've paired with a flared skirt and blue keds, along with tiny sunstuds I picked so they wouldn't get in the way while dancing. With a little more pep in my step, I take my place in the group of a couple dozen that's gathered around our instructors, the woman in the polka dot dress, who can't be more than 5 feet tall, and a beanpole of a guy in shiny Oxfords and a newsboy cap. They've kicked off the class by dancing to a Ray Charles song with so much energy it looks as though the guy is tossing the girl around. She never loses control, swiveling her legs, throwing out her arms, and at one point stealing the guy's cap and putting it on her own head. When the song ends, everyone claps. "Good evening, everyone," the girl says in a bright and booming voice. "Welcome to Lindy Hop 101. I'm Zara, and this is Theo. We'll be your instructors. We're pretty fond of swing dancing, so we're jazzed you're all here to learn." At his pun, Theo gives us an impish grin. The amazing thing about swing dancing is that it's all improvised. None of it is choreographed. So if you were watching us just now, all of that, I was making it up as I went along. And I was following based on the cues he was giving me, Zara says. The first thing we're going to do is split you into 2 groups. People who want to lead, and people who want to follow. The lead has been the more traditionally male role, but that's super outdated and I kind of hate it. I actually prefer leading to following. So for now, if you're a more experienced dancer, whatever that experience happens to be, I'd recommend leading. But you can also feel free to pick whichever one speaks to you, and we'll even them out if we have to. I don't have any rhythm, I whisper to Russell as I pick the follow group with Nate, and he and Hannah, the experienced dancer, head to the lead side. Zara and Theo talk us through the most basic step, the one that will be the foundation of everything we do, the rock step, where weight is transferred from one foot and then to the other. Then we add on 2 triple steps, quick, quick, slow, Zara chants as we do it with her, and string the whole thing together. Perfect, Theo says once we've danced it a few times with music. Now it's time to pair up. Find someone on the opposite side, and once you're partnered up, let's form a circle. Somehow, it isn't until that moment that it hits me. I'm not just in a dance class. I'm in a dance class with Russell, and that means I'm going to be dancing with him. That realization temporarily freezes me in place, so when Russell reaches me, I've barely moved. He's in a gray striped button-up and dark jeans, paired with Adidas. Casual Russell. "Do you want to be my partner?" he asks with this shy half-smile. "Yes." Save me from the traumatic middle school flashbacks.
I refuse to believe that Ari Abrams was ever picked last for anything.
My brain runs wild with that sentence. I can't tell if it's a compliment or not.
I'm fairly certain it's a rite of passage, I say, which sounds safe enough.
We find a place in the circle next to Hannah and Nate, David Wong and morning producer Deandra Fuller on our opposite side.
Zara and Theo demonstrate how to hold hands, elbows loosen at our waists, Russell's hands open, palms up, my fingers curled gently over the tops of his.
This okay? Not too tight? Perfect, I say quietly, too focused on how perfect it is. Every slight movement feels like breaking news. Russell Beringer just ran a thumb along my knuckles. Where will he strike next? More at 11. His hands make mine seem tiny, and I'm more aware of his scent, cedar and citrus, than I've ever been.
It goes straight to whatever part of my brain is responsible for crafting daydreams.
Somehow that night in the hotel bar was only a few weeks ago, and now he's in my life and lighting up my thoughts.
It could be 3 minutes or 30 that we practice the rock step triple step together, the hypnotic, repetitive rhythm lulling me into a trance.
I'm desperate to learn a new step, something that will either push me closer or farther from Russell. I'm not sure which one I'd prefer. Then Zara and Theo call for us to switch partners, which we do every 5 minutes. My head clears, giving me a chance to keep watching the door, which also means I keep apologizing for stepping on my partner's feet. Not everyone has such a natural grip or comfortable presence. There's an older guy who clenches my fingers so tightly they turn white, and a woman who is focused so intently on the dance that she doesn't utter a word. We go through several other moves, including one called the cuddle, which Russell comes right back around the circle for. His cheeks are flushed from exertion now, which gives that daydreamy sector of my brain more material. So I think it goes like this, and then, he leads me through it, his arm sliding around me. We did it. The enthusiasm in his voice is too endearing, his citrus scent too overwhelming. In his excitement, he lets go of my hands, grinning down at me, and this time, I'm less thrilled to switch partners. Torrance shows up first, with about 5 minutes left in the lesson, and I might squeeze Russell's arm a bit too tightly when I spot her. She's all elegance, her lips bright red and her hair curling from a high ponytail. She's in the kind of skirt that must twirl when she dances, and she checks her coat and bag like she's done this 100 times before catching my eye and giving me a half wave. When Zara and Theo let us loose for the social dance, which begins with a bouncy Ella Fitzgerald song, Seth appears in the venue doorway. He's in a starched white shirt and suspenders that somehow make him look more buff than usual, hair gelled back the way it was the night of the holiday party. He might even be carrying a fedora. They're here, I say on an exhale. Oh my God. They're really here. And they're both dressed up. This is too cute for words. Let's not get too excited yet, Russell says. They might not be glad to see each other. Seth actually tips his hat to us, and I feel we've time traveled a solid 70 years into the past. I'm so caught up in the thrill of seeing them both here that it takes me a split second to notice Russell holding out his hand to me. What do you think? Ready for the big leagues? Of course you would make a sports reference. I give him my hand, and he leads me to a corner of the dance floor. A man extended a hand to Torrance right away, but Seth remained seated. All around us, much more experienced couples fly across the floor, skirts swishing and shoes squeaking. The sight of Torrance and Seth has made me jittery, and it's not long before I fail to pick up on one of Russell's cues and stumble into him, brushing against his stomach, where he's the roundest. Sorry, he says quickly, recovering and sending me into an overhead turn. No, I'm sorry, I'm the one who bumped into you. Oh, it's okay. He shakes this off, but I don't miss that he puts a little more space between us, as though anxious about his size, or how he thinks I might feel about his size. I can't help wondering whether a thinner guy would have apologized, and it makes me want to reassure him in some way. Tell him it didn't bother me. Except I have no idea how, so I just keep following the bends and twists of his arms. The song ends, and while most dancers switch partners, neither of us lets go. Your story today was fantastic, I say. Torrance is now dancing with Zara, the two of them talking like old friends who haven't seen each other in a while, and maybe they are. The pickleball one. You know you're doing something right in life when you're getting paid to be shit at pickleball. I love that about your stories. That they're not just about sports, they're about people. At that, he meets my gaze and grins, eyes crinkling at the corners. Up close, his long lashes might be deadly. If my limbs turn to goo, at least he'll be here to hold me up. That's exactly what sports are about. It's after the next song, while Russell and I take seats on the sidelines, marveling at the ballroom's grand architecture, that an out-of-breath Torrance makes her way toward the water fountain and Seth removes his hat, tapping her shoulder with the brim. She whirls around, and I'm expecting her to admonish him, but instead she swipes the hat and playfully smacks his chest with it. And when Seth extends a cupped hand, Torrance raises an eyebrow at him, before turning his hand over and leading him out onto the dance floor. In their bygone-era clothing, they match. We're not the only ones mesmerized by the sight of them. Torrance is a skilled lead, while also giving Seth a chance to shine. Beat by beat, they push and pull against each other, rarely breaking eye contact. It's as though this place has transformed them both, and I'm a little out of breath just watching. I know it may not last, that we might show up at work on Monday and nothing will have changed. But for now, it feels almost magical. I can't believe it, Russell says, his elbow bumping mine and scattering sparks across my skin. Well done, weather girl. After another half hour of dancing, Zara walks to the middle of the floor and takes the mic. Good evening, everyone, she says. If you've been here before, you know what time it is. It's time for the birthday dance. Everyone who knows what this means erupts into cheers, including Torrance and Seth. I glance at Russell, but he just shrugs. The dancers have started to form a circle around Zara. Can I get anyone who had a birthday this week to raise their hands? No hands go up, and everyone glances around the room to see if there really are no birthdays. Really? No one? Slowly, Russell raises his hand. It was your birthday? I whisper. When? Today. He looks so adorably sheepish as he tries to hide a smile. I'd be mortified, but he walks right up to the middle of the circle when Zara beckons him. Since this is your first time, I'll explain, she says. The birthday dance is a swing dance tradition. You and I will kick it off, and anyone can take my place at any time to dance with you. You ready? As I'll ever be, he says. They start dancing as the circle claps to the beat, and though he's a beginner, Zara has this way of making him look much more experienced. Other dancers cut in, usually for a few bars at a time, and Russell does his best to lead them all, grinning the entire time like the good sport he is. Some of them have flashier moves than others, but none of them are beginners. Even Torrance takes a turn. When someone switches her out, she sidles up next to me and nudges my shoulder. Go, she urges, and it's all the encouragement I need. There's a bit of fumbling as he reaches for my hand, but eventually, he grasps it, and we rock step triple step together. I can't believe you didn't tell anyone it was your birthday, I say as he spins me. I've never been that into birthdays, he says. I didn't want to make it a big deal. Like, dancing with a dozen strangers kind of a big deal? Exactly. The song is in its last chorus, and while I expect someone to interrupt us, no one does. I shake my head, laughing. Happy birthday, I say into his ear as he pulls me into the cuddle. It's the best night I've had in a long, long time. 11. Forecast. Cold air moving in alongside an avalanche of awkward. The annual KSEA retreat is more corporate team building than vacation, but this year, I have an extra reason to look forward to it. Torrance, head of the planning committee, booked a lodge/spa outside of Vancouver, BC, and Russell and I make plans to drive together to prolong our scheming time. I'm not sure my car will make it to Canada, he said, so the next Friday morning, I pull up in front of his house on a quaint Finney Ridge street shaded by tall evergreens. Nothing wrong with sharing a 3-hour drive, plus border wait time, with an attractive coworker I now know how to swing dance with. As soon as I stop my car, I notice a girl sitting on the front steps, a book in her lap. A girl who looks about 12 years old. When she spots my car, she leaps to her feet, long dark ponytail swinging behind her. Dad, she yells into the house. Your ride's here. I freeze with my car door open, unsure what to do. Fortunately, Russell appears in the doorway, asking his daughter something I can't hear, and she shrugs in return. I give him an awkward wave as he beckons me forward. Hey, he says, tugging on his collar in this way he tends to do when he's nervous. Today's jacket is more casual, a KSEA 6 zip-up. This is Elodie. Elodie, this is Ari. Elodie surveys me, blue eyes behind thin oval glasses, and I've never before wondered if my fashion sense is preteen approved. She's wearing high-waisted jeans and an oversized striped sweater and looks 200% cooler than I do in my suitable for a long drive leggings and UW Atmospheric Sciences Department sweatshirt. Nice to meet you, she says. You too. I busy my hands fidgeting with the strap of my bag. Your dad said you're in the school play? Musical, she corrects, with all the confidence of a theater kid, but I can tell she's pleased he mentioned her. She holds up the book she was reading, which I now see as a script. It's Alice in Wonderland. I'm the Queen of Hearts. Ooh, the villains always get the best songs. Her eyes widen. You know musicals? I know zero about sports, but musicals, I'm all over, I say. My brother and I used to save up money to catch the Broadway tours when they came through Seattle. We saw Dear Evan Hansen last year and it was transformative. Elodie lets out a shriek. I've been wanting that one to come back here forever. It was amazing, wasn't it? Did you cry? So much, I tell her, and just like that, her hesitation turns to a combination of jealousy and awe. Russell clears his throat. I hope I haven't said too much to her, though I'm nothing to Russell but a coworker. A co-schemer. Her mom was about to pick her up, but she just texted that she's running late, he says. Do you mind if we stick around a few minutes? Oh, sure. That's completely fine. Except he looks deeply uncomfortable, focusing on plucking a stray thread from his jacket and not quite making eye contact. It's clear this wasn't planned, that Elodie's mother was supposed to be here before I pulled up. I'm not sure how many people at work have met his kid, but I'm going to guess not many. Again, I wonder how old he is. After the birthday dance, I had to hold myself back from asking because I worried he'd be able to tell I was doing mental math. For all I know, she could be adopted, though there's a clear physical resemblance in the blue of their eyes, the shape of their faces. Do you want me to wait in the car? I ask. Russell's brow furrows. No, of course not. You can come inside. A bit gingerly, I step over the threshold, like maybe Russell's hiding even more secrets inside. The house is cozy, warm tones and plush rugs, bright-colored vintage artwork on the walls along with framed photos of Elodie as a baby, as a kid, as the preteen she is now. And of course, some sports memorabilia. A black and white team photo, a framed jersey with the name of a player I don't recognize. It's a great house, I say as I spot a wood fireplace in the living room. It was a bit of a fixer-upper. He leans against the wall next to a photo of toddler Elodie clutching a stuffed cow and grinning at the camera. But the fixing is all wrapped up, at least for now. There are a few more things I'd like to do to it, but it's tough to find the time.
No one told me that when you get a house, your weekends are spent primarily fixing up the house.
Do not get him started on the house, Elodie warns. He'll never stop. If I recall, you were a pretty big fan of the loft we built in your room. Elodie mimes zipping her lips. What? I love the house? Say anything you want about the house? My mind is working overtime to process this. This is Russell Beringer, father. Homeowner. Wearer of excellent jackets. Maybe I wasn't getting to know him that well after all. When Russell's phone lights up in his hand, he doesn't even let it complete its first ring. She's here, he says to Elodie. You have everything you need? Let's see. Hair dye, DIY tattoo kit, fake ID. Check, check, and check. If I didn't already know she was a theater kid, her killer straight face confirms it. Don't have too much fun. That's my line. He pulls her in for a hug, and oh no. Something terrible is happening to my heart. The wind chimes sing, and a white woman with a brunette pixie cut and long wool coat appears, pushing open the door. Elodie? She says, stepping inside. You ready? Then her gaze lands on me, her face splitting into a grin. Hi. You must be Ari Abrams. She extends her hand. I feel like I know you already. I watch you every morning. Oh, thank you? I phrase it like a question because this scene feels straight out of a sitcom. This is Elodie's mother. And she's excited to meet me? I'm getting too many mystery pieces of Russell all at once. Sorry, I'm Liv. Ah, I'm a little starstruck. She laughs, running a hand through her short hair. I know, Russ is on TV, too, but we've known each other forever. So this is like meeting a local celebrity. I definitely don't feel like a celebrity when I'm microwaving frozen ravioli in my 450 square foot studio apartment, I say, and it's meant to be a way to break the tension, but it only comes out sounding pathetic. Either oblivious to the awkwardness or all too aware of it, Elodie says, I forgot my retainer, and turns to rush upstairs. Russell has become a statue next to me. Liv, Ari. Ari, Liv. Though, I guess you two kind of already covered that. Liv touches his arm in this familiar way that reminds me she's not just Elodie's mother. She's Russell's ex, from who knows how long ago. Someone's knocking at the door. Again. And again, they don't wait for anyone to answer it. "What's taking so long?" asks a tall, trim guy with salt and pepper hair and one of those down vests all men over the age of 30 in Seattle own. "I think I got Alex the same one for his birthday. Let's get this show on the road." Russell's gaze flicks from me to this new stranger. He looks as though he might self-destruct. "This is Perry," he says, seizing the opportunity to preempt the introductions this time around. Liv's husband and Elodie's stepdad. He glances behind Perry. "And is that Clementine I see back there?" Perry grins. "She just dozed off. I couldn't bring myself to wake her." He holds out his hand for me to shake before turning back to Russell. "I take it Clementine is a baby. The Kraken is looking solid this year. Think they have a chance at the playoffs?" "Hope so." Russell scrapes a hand across his chin, no longer making eye contact with any of us. "Well, since I didn't intend on hosting a party today." Liv gazes around at our motley crew. "Oh my. I fear we've overwhelmed poor Ari. I'm so sorry. We're a bit overly friendly in this family. As long as a St. Bernard doesn't barge in here next or anything," I joke. "Don't worry, we left him in the car," she says, and I'm not sure whether she's kidding. "Found it," Elodie calls, bounding down the steps. When she lands with a soft thump, she surveys us like we're a mildly interesting TV show Netflix has asked if she's still watching. "Why are you all just standing here?" "Great question." Russell ruffles a hand through her hair and slides up one strap of her backpack that's fallen down. "We're on a schedule, too. Enjoy your weekend, I love you, don't forget to actually wear that retainer." Elodie pats the front of her backpack. "I'm sure you'll barely have time to miss me." The first 15 minutes of our drive are silent, except for a few seconds when the audiobook I was listening to starts up, and I have to smack the power button because I'm fairly certain my romance novel was heading toward a sex scene. So, that was a little. I fiddle with the wrapper of one of 3 strawberry fruit leathers I brought on the trip, none of which sound appetizing. "Awkward?" he supplies, then forces a laugh. "Just a bit. Liv is your ex-wife?" "We were never married, actually." He stares out the window. "I wasn't trying to keep them a secret or anything. It's complicated." But he doesn't elaborate on precisely how it's complicated, and I'm not about to probe him for answers. I'm not sure where I would start. "So, okay then. That's that." It's only when we hit Everett traffic that he turns to me, as though we've left all that weirdness in Seattle. "I booked a massage for Seth this evening, only he won't know it's really a couple's massage," Russell says. He's always complaining about his back, and especially after a long drive, it seemed like just the thing. Perfect. And I signed all of us up for ziplining tomorrow. If reality TV has taught me anything, there's nothing like an adrenaline rush to bring 2 people together. Aside from that, I'm going to try to get closer to Torrance. Get to know her better. We know Seth's side of the story, but we won't have the full picture until we hear hers. Are we? Do you think we're still doing the right thing here? The car inches forward. What do you mean? What if it was something really terrible that split them up? He asks. What if one of them cheated? Hopefully we'll know more after this weekend. Again, I think back to what Torrance said at the holiday party. And we'd draw a line if it got to that point. We can't make anyone fall in love. All we're doing is creating an opportunity. I definitely wouldn't want to push Torrance into something she's not comfortable with. That's why it's so crucial I make progress with her, I say. Maybe it's naive to believe that Seth's changed, but I want to be naive, damn it. Has he been different with you at work? Different? More attention? Any pro sports? Oh, yeah. I'm covering a few basketball games next week. I brighten. Russell. That's great. He gives me a half smile, and I feel half better. All I want is for them to ride off into the sunset and be together forever, I continue. I want to throw them a 50th anniversary party. That's gold, right? I'll have to sell off an internal organ to get them a massive gold sculpture of themselves, but it'll be worth it. I'll chip in, he says. I don't need both kidneys. And then we fall into silence again. Things with Russell don't return to normal. Not when we stop for burritos in Bellingham. Not when we wait in border traffic. Not when we make it into Canada. The energy around us is charged, not light and easygoing like it usually is. I miss it. We've become something close to friends over the past month, and I'm not ready to go back to what we were before, despite this inconvenient crush I have on him. That's all it is, a crush, and it will pass. Just like my crush on the guy in the employee cafeteria, who recently shaved his beard. Is there a direct correlation between the end of my crush and the disappearance of the beard? Who's to say? Of course, I know the real reason for this strained drive. I met Elodie and his ex's husband. Even if everyone seemed to get along, I can't shake the feeling we've crossed some line he didn't want me to cross. If that's true, I'm not sure how to uncross it. 12. Forecast. An unexpectedly balmy afternoon, clothing optional. As it turns out, Russell didn't just book a couple's massage for Torrance and Seth. Somehow, he booked a couple's massage for all four of us. It did seem a little pricey when I talked to them on the phone, Russell mutters as we're ushered back into changing rooms in the lodge's spa, after they've told us they don't do refunds. We've already checked into our rooms, which are wooden-floored and rustic, with sweeping views of the surrounding forest. Even with the retreat discount. Come on, Abrams. Torrance is already unbuttoning her coat. Don't tell me a massage doesn't sound incredible after 4 hours in the car. That's how I end up face down on a massage table, underneath a too thin white sheet and naked except for my underwear, sandwiched between Russell and my boss. Both of whom are also naked, to unknown extents. I love this. I have never been more relaxed in my life. You can take off your underwear if you want, my masseuse says as she adjusts the sheet. Oh, I'm okay, I say in this squeaky voice that's even higher pitched than my niece's. The table is heated, at least, and the lavender essential oils are doing their best to soothe my chaotic brain. I try to focus on the soft piano melody playing in the background. Still, our tables are so close together that I can hear every sigh, groan, and grunt of satisfaction as a masseuse works on Torrance. And on Russell. Let me know how the pressure is, his masseuse is saying. If you need it to be more or less firm, just tell me. That's good. Russell lets out a low moan, quiet, like he doesn't want anyone to hear him but just can't help himself. Perfect. I will myself to get swept away by the music. It doesn't work. Because of course I can only think about Russell's sounds in other contexts. My death is simply unavoidable. It'll be tragic, perishing almost naked in the middle of a massage, but my brother won't make too many jokes about it at my funeral. Probably. You're very tight. What? I say, maybe a little too sharply. My masseuse, a woman named Sage, chuckles. Your shoulder muscles. I haven't felt shoulders like yours in a while. Oh. Obviously that's what she was talking about. I immediately want to apologize, like my body has done something wrong by holding on to all this anxiety. She beckons over another masseuse. Anita, come see this. Feel how tight she is. Another pair of hands join Sage's. Wow. A lot of stress? I nod miserably into the face hole. I hear the sound of Torrance's muffled laugh. Sorry, she says. That might be my fault. No, I rush to say as my masseuse attacks a knot beneath my left shoulder blade. Work's been fine. It's just been a rough couple months outside of it. Too much talking, Seth murmurs from Torrance's other side. If you fall asleep, you won't be able to enjoy it, Torrance says in this mocking sing-song, but she's wrong. I'd give anything to fall asleep right now, especially as Russell's masseuse hits a spot that he seems to really enjoy. When I think I'm finally about to relax, my masseuse pats my back. All done. Oh. Okay then. There's some awkwardness as we navigate how to leave in our varying states of undress, and I decide to keep my head down as long as possible. The masseuses encourage us to use the sauna so the heat can melt away the toxins in our systems. There's one in the women's locker room and one in the men's, so we split up. Here it is, my chance to talk to Torrance one-on-one. I wrap myself in a towel, not relaxed enough to show my boss my boobs. And yet there's Torrance, letting it all hang loose. Actually, loose is the wrong word because Torrance Hale has a phenomenal body. If I looked like that at 55, I'd be prancing around in the nude, too.
She must notice my comfort level isn't quite where hers is, though, so she grabs a towel and cinches it around herself before we make our way to the sauna.
I sink down onto the wooden bench, idly wondering if my crush on Russell is a toxin the sauna can whisk away. Breakup, right? Torrance says. Her blonde hair is piled on top of her head, and this might be the first time I've seen her without makeup. Sorry, what? The source of your stress. I'm guessing part of it was your breakup? Torrance knows only the basics, not the ugly details. If I open up to her, like with Seth, maybe she'll be more likely to open up to me. So even though Garrison isn't a source of stress for me, not right now, I make a feast of ugly details for her. I nod. My fiancé ended things in October. It wasn't the most cordial breakup. Not entirely a lie. I remember when you got engaged, she says. That was a beautiful rock. That's surprising, not that she remembered, but that she isn't quick to denounce marriage. Tell me I dodged a bullet. It was a surprise, but in retrospect, it was for the best. I'm nowhere near ready to tell my boss the real reasons for the breakup, so I go with a vague, we weren't a good fit. Better to know as soon as possible, Torrance says. Reminds me of my first husband. I have to fight to keep my jaw from dropping. You were married? Before Seth? Only for a short time. We got it annulled after 3 months. It was a Vegas wedding. We'd gone there for some friends' joint bachelorette party and drank a bit too much. This was back when I was still an intern. Anyway, when we got back, we thought, why not try to make it work? But he didn't like that I was so buried in the station. A wicked smile. Sometimes I think of him seeing my face all around the city and on TV as my revenge. He can't get away from me. I have to laugh at that. I had no idea. I don't talk about it because, well, there's not much to talk about. She curls and uncurls the edge of her towel, staring down at her French pedicured toes. Seth and I were friends when I was with my ex. Nothing happened between us, but we were close, and it wasn't long after my annulment that Seth and I started seeing each other. There's something in her tone that I'm stunned to realize might be nostalgia. This love for Seth, this thing I've been told used to exist but I haven't been able to wrap my mind around. Summoning all my journalism instincts, I stay quiet, letting her speak. What someone says after a long pause is often the juiciest information. That probably goes double when the person's just had an aromatherapy massage, loose-limbed and hopefully loose-lipped. I focus on the heat in the sauna, trying to relax as much as my brain will allow. Sure enough, Torrance keeps talking. Seth was my favorite thing about work, and after a while, I realized I was looking forward more to coming into work and seeing him than going home to my ex. But, you know. Then that ended too, and I realized the only person I could ever truly rely on is myself. Other people only let me down. How did he let you down? She snorts, a very un-Torrance-like sound. Oh God, how didn't he? You don't really want all my dirty laundry, do you? She doesn't even wait for a response, clearly eager now to spill. We were interns at a medium-sized station in Olympia. We were both interested in the weather, and we had similar backgrounds. And, well, I got called up to fill in first when their regular meteorologist was sick. I've never been so fucking nervous in my life. I can't imagine Torrance Hale being nervous. Even though it happened years ago, it humanizes her, a little. I had this natural talent that people really responded to, she continues. It's not bragging, she's simply stating a fact. We didn't want to compete against each other. Seth wanted to be on the air, but he was also drawn to the managerial path. So that's what we did. He went that route, and I stayed on camera. He followed me around for jobs when I got promoted to bigger and bigger stations. Eventually, I landed this job in Seattle, and we settled down and started a family. He got jealous of the fame. I was earning more than he was, even when he became a manager, and he felt frustrated that he couldn't provide for me. For our family. No matter how many times I told him that he didn't have to be the one providing, that maybe that was how it was for our parents, but it didn't have to be that way for us, she says. First, he was passive-aggressive about it, little barbs here and there. Once he even said, "I'm not saying you're famous because you're a hot blonde, but I'm not saying it." And I'd remind him that I was a scientist, first and foremost, until I realized, fuck that, I didn't need his toxic masculinity. Jealousy has this way of simmering beneath the surface. When you don't talk about it, it builds and builds until you think it might even be part of your DNA. We could be fighting about unloading the dishwasher, but it was never about unloading the dishwasher.
It was about how Seth felt inferior, and he couldn't handle it.
I don't have any tolerance for that kind of toxic bullshit, but there's no hope for humanity if we can't grow and evolve, become better versions of ourselves. Bad choices and bad behavior don't doom someone to a lifetime as a bad person. I want to believe people can change, and while I don't want to redeem murderers or anything like that, how Seth acted, that's fixable. It has to be. It's not naivete, it's hope. I don't want to cross a line or anything, but it kills me to say that, knowing how wrong it is. But we're getting somewhere. Ari. We were just lying naked a few feet from each other. I don't think lines exist anymore. Fair point, I say, laughing. Did you ever try therapy? Torrance doesn't seem at all bothered by the question. I wanted to. For a couple years, I insisted we should talk to someone, but Seth was too proud. He didn't think we needed someone else knowing our private business. He thought we could figure it out on our own. And obviously, we didn't. I've always thought people can change. I want to tell her Seth went to therapy, but that's not my story to tell. The signs have stopped, right? And I saw you two dancing at Century Ballroom. Before we get much deeper, I should make sure you take my insurance. Do you charge by the hour? I wince. Sorry. We can talk about something else. I'm messing with you. You're making it way too easy for me. Torrance becomes pensive, stretching out her legs that remain golden tan even in the winter. When we really worked, she says, sounding wistful. I'd give anything to get those moments back. Maybe we were both too busy, or maybe it was something that happened naturally after being married almost 20 years. I don't know. A long sigh, and I wonder if she really means it, that she'd give anything to get those moments back. The people who love us the most have the power to hurt us the most, too. The sauna timer goes off, which is probably a good thing, since I'm beginning to feel lightheaded. We should get going before this thing burns us to a crisp. Torrance gets to her feet, pulling the towel tighter across her chest. What do you think, facials next? After I've been plucked, tweezed, buffed, and exfoliated within an inch of my life, I change for our all-staff welcome dinner. I'm starting to think this retreat is more R&R than work. But I guess I can't blame Torrance for wanting a break from it all. An escape.
It's possible I spend a little longer than usual deciding what to wear.
Russell's room is right next door to mine, as luck would have it, and once. I've slipped into my favorite dark jeans and a burgundy sweater over a cloud-printed button-up. I knock on his door, assuming we'll go down together. When there's no answer, I knock again. Nothing. I'm on my way to the elevator at the end of the third-floor hallway when I spot Torrance and Seth sitting together on a sectional in an alcove next to a fireplace. Their faces are bent close, their knees touching. It's definitely not a casual pose. For a few moments, I'm frozen. I could head back to my room, wait until they're gone. I could walk by, risk interrupting them. Or
I could stay here, next to this column, in case I can overhear anything they're saying.
They look so cozy that I can't help wondering if whatever's going on here is a result of the conversation Torrance and I had in the sauna. And that's what draws me closer, until I'm pressed up against a second column, trying to breathe as quietly as I can. If there's a line I haven't already crossed, I am aware that this, hiding behind a column and kind of sort of spying on my bosses, might be it. But it's not that I'm curious in some voyeuristic way. It's that I genuinely want to know if they're getting along. The way they're seated, the way they were dancing last week, all of it makes me think they might be able to get back the good parts of what they used to have. Maybe after all my talk about wanting to improve the station, what I really want is to see the two of them happy. Sure, it's a good idea? Torrance is saying. It's worth a try, Seth says. And then something terrible happens. I shift positions to stretch out some lingering tension in my back, and my boot lets out a high-pitched squeak on the polished wood floor. Their heads whip my direction as I spin and bolt down the darkened hallway, cursing these new rain boots, furious a favorite article of clothing betrayed me like this. Shit, shit, shit. They'll think I was spying on them. And, okay, I was, but for a good reason. They'll know why Russell and I have been asking so many questions, and they'll report us to HR and realize they really do hate each other after all. With a single uncontrollable action, I may have ruined our entire plan. I've spiraled so deep in my head that I miss the sign at the end of the hall that says wet floor. And then I miss the staircase. 13. Forecast. A torrent of secrets and at least one questionable decision. Can you bend your wrist a little more? Asks the X-ray technician. This is about as far as I can go, I say, grimacing as a sharp pain shoots from my wrist to my elbow. Am I bending it at all? Nope. Here, let me help you. He tries to bend it for the X-ray, and holy fucking shit, it hurts more than my IUD insertion. I hiss out a string of colorful curse words, followed by an apology. Not to worry, he says. I've heard worse. I'm told to go to hell a few times a week at least.
He tells me to hold it there for 5 seconds, during which time I learn that when you are in this much pain, 5 seconds can feel like an eon, until the machine clicks.
The way my body is contorted must be undoing every bit of the massage. The actual fall is blurred from my memory. All I remember is my foot catching air at the top of the staircase and then how hard I landed, the surge of fear when I couldn't move my left arm. The way Torrance and Seth and eventually Russell appeared in front of me and sat with me, helped me to my feet, asked the lodge staff for some ice.
I remember holding the melting ice pack to my left arm as Russell helped me into an Uber, grateful when he slid in next to me, silently freaking out because I couldn't move any of my fingers. I've never broken a bone, never twisted an ankle or sprained a finger or chipped a tooth. So of course, at the age of 27, I managed to topple down a flight of stairs and likely fracture my elbow. Bright sides. I know I was lucky. I know it could have been so much worse. But it's also really fucking painful. The tech takes me back to the exam room, where Russell's sitting in a hard plastic chair, one leg bouncing up and down. His hair is mussed, like maybe he's been raking a hand through it. Earlier, when a nurse first brought me back and asked if I was currently taking any medications, I stammered out an, oh. And he said, I'll wait outside until you need me, okay? If I ever had doubts about him being a certified good person, that would have confirmed it. I gestured for him to go back in when I went for X-rays, and now he jumps to his feet as soon as I re-enter, the tech letting us know that the doctor will be in shortly. Hey, Russell says softly. Everything go okay? I nod, swallowing hard to keep the emotions at bay. My makeup is probably smudged all down my face. The exam room is too cold, my sweater too thin. I have to pee, but I'm afraid I won't be able to manage it by myself. I can't even hold my left arm up without using my right. I'm so sorry about all of this. It's at least the 10th time he said it. Are you shivering? Maybe a little. He takes off his corduroy jacket and drapes it across my shoulders, and it's much too big for me, but it smells like his citrus cedar soap, a welcome contrast to the clinical hospital smell.
Thank you. I grab it with my right hand, tugging it tighter around me. Even the slightest movement bumps my left arm and makes me wince. The doctor comes back in, her name stitched above the pocket of her white coat. Dr. Jacobs. It's just as I thought, she says, sliding onto a stool next to her computer and pulling up my X-rays. Your elbow is fractured. How long until it heals? Could be 6 weeks, could be 12. We don't have a good way of knowing the time frame. She swipes over to another image. They all look like the blurry bones of a ghost to me. It looks like you also bruised a rib, which we unfortunately can't do much for, just painkillers, rest, and ice. That would explain why it hurts to breathe, I say with a forced laugh. And to laugh, though I guess I haven't been doing much of that in the past hour. She tells me to see an orthopedic doctor when I get back to Seattle, that it doesn't look like I'll need surgery, but they'll probably want me in weekly physical therapy. She unwraps a navy sling from a plastic package and helps me secure my arm, indicating my hand and forearm should be resting above my elbow. Then she gives me a prescription for pain relievers, my X-ray on a CD, and a whole bunch of paperwork. My first thought when we make it back to my hotel room is that I wish I'd done a better job cleaning up. I'm amazed by how much mess I've created in half a day from items packed solely for a long weekend, but I can't bring myself to care about the bra hanging off the back of a chair. I can't believe I did something so careless. So stupid. I kick off my boots and collapse on the bed, draping my uninjured hand across my face. Russell gestures to the bed next to me, as though asking if it's okay for him to sit down. I give him a nod. You're not stupid. It was an accident. It could have happened to anyone. Gently, he grazes the arm I have across my face with a few fingertips, and I feel my skin prick with goosebumps. I know, I just didn't exactly imagine this weekend playing out this way. At least now you know carrot cake M&Ms exist. He reaches for a bag at his feet and empties it onto the bed next to us. Needless to say, we missed the team dinner, though Torrance and Seth are about the furthest thing from my mind at this point. The lodge's kitchen is closed, and I told him I wasn't hungry enough to order food, but he stopped at the vending machine while we waited for the elevator. And now my grumbling stomach is grateful he did. Personally, I'm not sure how much longer I could have gone on without that knowledge. Don't make me laugh. It's too painful. I need serious Russell. He schools his face into a serious expression, eyes unblinking behind his glasses. There are 4 major golf championships in the world that take place between April and July. The most prestigious is the Masters Tournament, which is hosted by the Augusta National Golf Club in Georgia. Yes. More of that. That's perfect. I scoot higher on the bed, trying to find a comfortable position with my arm in a sling. Spoiler. There is none. Do you mind grabbing my phone for me? It's all the way over there. I gesture to where I set my bag on the desk, which right now feels very far away. He retrieves it, handing it to me without so much as glancing at the screen. God, he's just so polite, and maybe my standards are way down in the gutter, but still. It makes me wonder what it would take to unstitch him. To mess up his hair and rumple his jacket. I thank him and unlock my phone. A text from Torrance, asking how I am. I fumble with the keyboard for a while before giving up and sending a voice text, filling her in on the past couple hours. Is there anything else I can get you or do for you? Really, just say the word. I'm okay for now. Thank you. I drop the phone to the bed next to me and let out a laugh I immediately regret, given the way it makes my chest ache. I feel like I'm going to run out of different ways to thank you. You really don't have to do any of this. I'll be okay for the rest of the night if you want to go meet up with everyone else. He must hear the longing in my voice, the truth that I don't want him to go meet up with everyone else at all. I'm happy to stay, he says.
I broke my arm playing hockey when I was in middle school.
I was such a baby. My mom had to cut up my food and help me wrap my arm in plastic every time I took a shower. That sounds adorable, your mom fawning over you. His mouth kicks into a grin. I was a little shit about it. Definitely not adorable. He shifts on the bed, his shirt stretching across the curve of his belly. Seriously, though. Whatever you need. Maybe you could just talk to me? I don't want to talk about Torrance or Seth or work. I just want to relax, which I guess is what we came all the way up here to do. I can do that. About 5 seconds of silence follow, and I burst out laughing, in spite of the pain. You put me on the spot. That was a lot of pressure, he says, but he's laughing, too. Can you tell me about Elodie? I say, worried for a moment that he'll shut down, the way he did on the drive. I reach for a pack of Skittles, using my teeth to tear it open. Well. He draws out the word, busies himself with opening the aforementioned carrot cake M&Ms. I'm convinced he's going to change the subject, tiptoe around it. But he doesn't. She's in drama, as you know. Ever since she was little, she's loved the spotlight. She loves show tunes, and she can really sing. For her 9th birthday a few years ago, we went to New York and spent the whole week seeing shows. She seems awesome. I haven't spent much time around 12-year-olds lately, but damn, she's sharp. Are they all like that? She and her friends definitely keep me on my toes. She's a good kid, though. A great kid. Her bat mitzvah is coming up, too, and I thought she'd complain about having to get up early every Saturday, but she hasn't, not even once. How's that going? I've had only a few painful flashbacks to my own, he says. I'm excited for her. Liv isn't Jewish, and we wanted Elodie to be able to decide for herself what she wanted to do, and she's been focused on this for a while. I'm really proud of her for committing. I knew Russell had this whole other life as a father, but it's not until this moment that it hits me how different his set of priorities is. He's not just responsible for another human. He has this whole range of emotions reserved for only her, pride and awe and comfort. It's staggering, really, to imagine what these past 12 years have been like for him. A silence passes between us, during which I unearth a purple Skittle from the bag and chew it slowly. It felt like maybe you were upset with me, I say. In the car. Ah. It may have seemed that way because, well, I'm not sure if I was upset, exactly. There's just. He becomes inordinately fascinated by the floral pattern of the bedspread, knotting his fingers with the tassels on the duvet. It's complicated. We have all night. Or until these meds make me pass out. If you want to talk about it, that is. I don't want to force him, but I can't explain how badly I want to know this side of him. How it feels like if I don't, he'll go back to being a work acquaintance, when I want him to be so much more than that. This has to be the first step, I'm certain of it. His blue eyes flick up to mine, and then back down to the bed. Elodie was born when I was 17. Oh. You just turned 29? It's not the first question on my list, but it's the only one that comes out. He nods, still not making eye contact. Liv and I had been dating since freshman year of high school, and we'd known each other since we were kids. Our parents were best friends, and we even hid our relationship for the first few months we were dating because we didn't want them to get too involved. Obviously the pregnancy wasn't anything we were planning, he says with a rough laugh. We talked about it, and we weighed all the options, and ultimately it was her choice. She wanted to have the baby, and I wanted to be there for her any way I could. I'm still trying to process this, searching for the right thing to say. I can't imagine how hard that was, I settle on. An understatement. The year she was born was the hardest of my life. We were teen parents. We had no fucking clue what we were doing. We were lucky that our parents supported her choice, and I know now that we both had a tremendous amount of privilege. Don't Don't get me wrong, they were furious and they were disappointed. But they helped us out, both financially and as babysitters. Kids at school were considerably less understanding. Some of them tried, and some teachers, too, but there was so much judgment. Liv got the worst of it, and I felt terrible. And I did it, too, for a while, he continues, and at this, he finally meets my gaze again.
It's not pain in his eyes, I don't think, it might be weariness.
I judged myself so harshly. How could I have made this mistake that would irrevocably alter the course of my life? I'd wanted to go to college, maybe on a hockey scholarship, but I quit, I had to. It was expensive, something I'd been fortunate enough not to think about very much when my parents were footing the bill, but suddenly everything was expensive, and of course, there wasn't enough time. And you and Liv stayed together, at least for a while? Until sophomore year of college, yeah. It took us a couple extra semesters to make it through, but we managed. Liv studied engineering, and she got a job offer in Seattle almost right after she graduated. She didn't want to take Elodie away from me, and I didn't want to be away from either of them, so moving was an easy decision to make. And then you wound up at KSEA. Not right away, he says. I networked a ton, freelanced a ton. Became friends with the guy who used to have my job, who put in a good word when he moved to ESPN. I don't think Edible Arrangements makes a big enough basket to thank him for what he did for me. A pause as he reaches out to help me with the stubborn wrapper of a Twix. I still have a lot of residual anxiety from all of it, I guess. I don't talk about Elodie much at work because I don't want to have to explain how old I was when she was born. I don't want anyone leaping to the conclusion that because I was a teen dad, that must make me a fuck-up. You are absolutely not a fuck-up. I place my right hand on his arm. Russell. You're not. I wasn't trying to hide her. And I love being a father. I love Elodie, she's the most important person in my life. So when you met Elodie and then Liv showed up, I just shut down. I get it.
I mean, I haven't been through it, but I understand why, and I'm not judging you.
I wouldn't. As if of its own accord, my hand strokes up and down along his arm. The meds must be making me loopy, giving me this freedom to touch him in ways I may not have been brave enough to do otherwise. Thank you for telling me. I wanted you to meet her, he says. And that was before I knew you were as into show tunes as she is. I try not to linger on what it might mean that he wanted me to meet her. She's got great taste. Slowly, I move my hand away, dropping it back to the bed. You and Liv are still close? That's pretty impressive. It took a while to get there, but yes, I guess so. I never wanted to be the kind of parents who made things hell for their kid by not being together, so it's been a huge relief. There were a couple years where it was awkward with the two of us, but maybe because we'd been friends for so long before Elodie, we eventually found our way back to that. We alternate custody every other week, and so far we haven't had any problems with it, he says. Liv got married a few years ago, and they had a baby last year, Clementine, who Elodie absolutely adores. We're a complicated family, maybe, but it works. They all seem wonderful. Truly. He gives me this half smile, and I want so badly to make this equal, to let him in the way I softly knocked and asked for his secrets. It's different from how I've felt with guys before, and sure, that could be the meds, too, or maybe it's that I feel this distinct sense of calm around him. But the way I'm lying down, my shirt is twisted behind my back, and I can't move without jostling my arm. I must make some kind of noise because Russell's face turns serious again, that cute furrow appearing between his brows. It's a good thing he wears glasses, without that barrier, the lovely blue of his eyes would be far too powerful. You okay, weather girl? God, that nickname. Why does it sound even sexier at night in a hotel room? Yeah, I might be more comfortable in pajamas? I could help you change, he says, and then quickly adds, only if you want me to. My burgundy sweater is across the room, but I'm still in a button-up. Jeans. A belt. It's a lot of clothing to need help with. Don't sound too eager to get me undressed, I tease. A flush creeps onto his cheeks. I swear to God, that's not where my mind was going. I snicker as I lift myself off the bed and stumble toward my suitcase, digging through it one-handed before producing my pajamas, a short-sleeved Henley and a pair of shorts that I know for a fact are see-through. When I catch my reflection in the mirror above the desk, all my bravado vanishes. I should put the hotel room ice bucket over my head, I'd look cuter. I'm a mess right now, I'm sorry. You're not, he says, and even if he's just being nice, I don't hate hearing it. I don't think you could look like a mess even if you tried. He moves closer, until there's only 1.5 feet of space between us, and reaches for my belt buckle. My most innocent clothing item. He undoes it as delicately as if it were made of glass, and instead of letting it thump to the floor, drapes it on the armchair next to my suitcase. Then he carefully unvelcros my sling, placing it next to the belt so neatly, I have to wonder if this is how he does his laundry, too. What next? Shirt, I say, because my arm is begging to be free. Cute pattern, he says about the tiny clouds. Very on brand. He gets to work unbuttoning, starting at the top, his face close to mine. Long lashes and citrus and body heat. He pauses after each button, the briefest hesitation, and I realize it must be because he doesn't want to hurt me. He's maybe 6 inches taller than I am, so he has to duck his head, but every couple buttons, he flicks his gaze to mine, as though checking in with me. Each time, I give him what I hope is a reassuring half-smile. This is okay, that smile says. I am not at all aroused by this. When he reaches the last one, I let out a long, slow breath. It takes some wincing and maneuvering to extricate my arms from the sleeves, and then he folds the shirt next to my belt and sling. A split second too late, I fling out my right hand to cover my bra. I'm in a hotel room with Russell Beringer, wearing jeans and a pink lace push-up. Do you, He swallows hard, staring at my tiny pile of clothes. Do you want your bra off, too? With the 3 brain cells I have left, I consider this. Do I want Russell to take off my bra? It's a rhetorical question, obviously I do. And undoubtedly I'd be more comfortable sleeping without it. I pause for too long, imagining his fingertips running along the straps, sweeping up to the nape of my neck and then back down my spine. If you could just unhook it in the back, then I should be able to get off on my own. Freudian slip. Get it off on my own. I can do that. The warmth of his hands on my skin is too good. Like everything he does. Again, he takes his time. Logically, I realize he can't notice my nipples tightening to almost painful peaks, and if he hears the hitch in my breath, he probably assumes it's because of my injury. I melt into his touch as he unhooks me with deft fingers, wondering what he'd do if I turned around. If he'd take me in for a few moments, admiring every curve and dip and freckle, or if he'd be so overcome with want that he'd need his mouth on me right away. Under different circumstances, I'd want him to push. To pull. To grip me hard and sear my skin. Unfortunately, the meds swimming through my bloodstream are stronger than my libido. And the necklace? His fingers ghost over the chain, and I wonder if he can sense my shiver. When I nod, it takes him a few seconds to unclasp it. He places it on the bureau while I grab my pajama shirt with my right hand, attempting to cover my breasts with my bad arm. An image from this afternoon pops into my head, unbidden. A laugh bubbles up my throat, I can't stop it. What is it? He asks, looking pointedly at the window curtains. I almost got into the sauna with Torrance completely nude earlier, I say, and this makes him laugh, too. I swear I'm not a prude, I just did not expect to see my boss naked today? You really have had a rough day. So trust me. This is a lot less awkward than disrobing in front of Seattle's favorite meteorologist. Except then I have to move the hand on my breasts to get it into the shirt sleeve. I'm not looking. His voice is a low scrape, sounding somehow across the room and right up against my ear all at once. I am no longer laughing. I swear. If I told him he could look all he wanted, I'm not sure I'd want him to admire me first. His fingers could do all the appreciating I needed. I press my thighs together, let out a shaky breath. Maybe my libido is perfectly fine. Finally, only my jeans are left. As he unbuttons them, a thumb whispers across the skin just below my navel, that soft touch nearly making me gasp. "Sorry," he say, pulling back. I didn't mean." No, it's okay," I say, trying to reassure him.
You can keep going.
"I'm just ticklish, I guess. I can be gentler." He hooks his thumbs through the belt loops and guides my jeans down my legs, his palms tracing my hips. Gentler, it turns out, is fucking torture. Then we're done, and I find myself wishing I'd dressed for an expedition to Antarctica. "Thank you." My first instinct is to hug him, but I haven't figured out how to do that with one arm. So I inch forward, dropping my forehead to rest lightly in the space just above his heart. As though realizing what I'm attempting to do, he puts his arms around me, uncertain at first. Then he pulls me closer, tucking me against him, and I'm half certain I could fall asleep in this position if I weren't so wildly turned on. A few fingers skim up my spine, back and forth in a hypnotic motion. My eyes fall shut. With each stroke, I imagine he's touching me somewhere else. My lower lip. The inside of my wrist. A birthmark on my left hip bone.
I inhale, drawing in his citrus cedar scent and pure Russell sweetness.
"Thank you," I repeat, stumbling back on unsteady legs. Of course. His face has gone red again, and he's not making eye contact. "Do you, want your shorts?" I glance down at my bare legs. Oh my god. I hugged him in a shirt and panties. Why was abject horniness not listed as a side effect on this medication? "Excellent idea," I croak. That ice bucket is looking more and more appealing. I shimmy into shorts and move back to the bed, trying to control my breathing as he perches on the edge again. So goddamn gingerly. "Russell. You just took off my clothes. You can lie down on the bed if you want." He gives me a half smile before sliding onto the bed next to me and stretching out his legs. He lets out this long breath, like we've done something far more aerobic than putting on pajamas. Somebody kill me, because it's the sexiest sound I've heard in months. I'm exhausted, too, but he's given me so much tonight. The least I can do is reciprocate. My love life has been kind of a mess, too, I say. I thought I'd be getting married this year. I'd be deep in wedding planning right now, picking a caterer and a band and a font for our invitations. I get the impression that maybe you're glad not to be? I really am. We'd barely started planning, and his parents were already putting pressure on us to start having kids. Of course, not the reason it ended, but it didn't make anything better. "Do you think you want them?" he asks. "Kids?" Normally, it would be such a personal question, one I've rolled my eyes at and complained about in the past. Most people don't even ask. They just assume that of course you will procreate, so they don't care about the if. Only the when. But I don't mind him asking at all. "I do," I say. "Someday. I spend a lot of time with my brother's kids, and I love them." But it wasn't so much about that as it was that I couldn't picture the wedding itself. I couldn't make any decisions about it, and I'm pretty sure that's because it wasn't right. Not that something being right makes it easy, but it makes those hard parts a lot more manageable. I turn to him, propping my head up with my right arm. Right. Exactly. My ex isn't a bad guy. He just thought I wasn't real enough. I say the words like I'm putting them in air quotes, and the ease with which I'm able to share this with Russell catches me off guard. He told me I was too sunshine. Which, rude, using my own job against me. What does that even mean, too sunshine? That I'm pretending with everyone. That I'm hiding real shit because, I break off, shaking my head. I can't get into the tidal wave that is my mother. Not when I'm going to see her the day after tomorrow. We're too much, I can hear her saying. Usually when my mother crosses my mind, I force a smile and send out a positive affirmation. But not right now. Not when I'm trying to explain to Russell that this was the reason Garrison wanted out. I've locked all this darkness in a room at the end of the hallway and haven't let anyone inside. But for him, I crack the door. Just a little. Just for tonight. Because it's harder to deal with, I finish. A partial truth. It's all I can give him for now. I don't think you're like that at all, Russell says. You're the kind of person who makes other people feel good to be around. That's a great thing. You feel good being around me? I ask in this paper-thin voice. His gaze is heavy on mine, and it's more intimate than when he had his hands on my bra. All the time. It might be the loveliest thing someone said about me. Thank you. I swallow hard, allowing those words to sink in. All the time. I want to ask if he really means it, if he's talking about the times I've let the mask slip around him, too. The times I complained about our bosses and acted like it was all hopeless. But he hasn't seen me at my worst, on my darkest days. And he never can. As badly as I want to linger in his compliment, I have to change the subject. Maybe I'll try the whole casual dating thing TV shows about hot 20-somethings living in the big city make look so easy. The spell broken, Russell readjusts on the bed, crossing his legs at the ankles. I wish I had some great advice to give. But, he breaks off with a grimace, runs a hand down his face. Don't judge me. I won't. Okay. A long exhale, and then, I haven't been on a date in 5 years. I just stare. 5 years? When he laughs, it's a disbelieving, self-conscious kind of laugh. Like even he is shocked by it. I know. At first, it was because Liv and I had broken up, and Elodie was still a child. And then moving to a new city, it was all so much. Eventually, I fell into my routines, and they didn't end up including dating. The more time passed, the scarier it seemed to start trying again. My brain practically short-circuits with this information. 5 years. 5 years since he sat across from someone in a swanky restaurant and drank overpriced cocktails, since he saw a movie with a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, hoped it would at least be decent, and was frustrated by how aggressively mediocre it was. 5 years since he kissed someone goodnight at the end of an evening, blood spiked with adrenaline, pulse hammering in his throat. Well, that's it, I say, trying to erase that mental image. We'll get Torrance and Seth back together, and then we'll find you your first date in 5 years. He lifts an eyebrow, like this is a ludicrous proposition. I'm so out of practice. I wouldn't even know what to do. That's easy. You just say, "Hi, Ari Abrams, you look absolutely stunning in that sling." It really brings out your eyes. Do you want to have dinner with me? I might have a fever, and this time I'm certain it's not a side effect of the medication. I hope he knows I'm joking. That I'm not actually encouraging him to ask me out. At least, I think I hope so. Despite my New Year's Eve resolution to start dating again, I'm unsure how to navigate a relationship post-Garrison, especially a relationship with a single dad. Good to know, he says in this light, joking tone I've come to like quite a bit. All the broken-armed women of Seattle aren't ready for me to sweep them off their feet. We talk about Elodie, about his childhood in Michigan, about my brother, about my jewelry making. Almost never about work, and it's such a relief. Until the day takes its toll on me and I feel my eyes start to close. Still, I don't ask him to leave. You're really good, I say before I drift off. You know that? I know any decent human wouldn't have made me go to the hospital by myself, and maybe they would have made sure I had something to eat, but you're just a really good person. I'm not sure what it sounds like to hear someone smile in the dark, but that must be what he's doing when I feel his hand on my shoulder, thumb rubbing back and forth against my thin t-shirt as he tells me thank you in a soft, sleepy voice. Yes, he's good, it's true, and yet when we're close like this, when there's only a fraction of space between my hips and his, I want to make him very, very bad. 14. Forecast. A treacherous morning commute leads to gloomy winter doldrums as the week wears on. The first thing Torrance wants to know is when I'll be out of the sling. The second is whether I'm okay. Fine, I grit out as I reach for the basket of English muffins on the breakfast bar in the lodge's dining room. If anything, the pain is sharper, more persistent than yesterday. The initial shock has worn off. I try to force my usual smile, but that must have fractured on my way down that fateful flight of stairs, too. The doctor said a few weeks, but I'll have a better idea once I see someone in Seattle. Torrance at least has the decency to realize she said something wrong, her features rearranging into what might be compassion. I'm so sorry. I should have asked how you were doing first. I was just so shocked to see you like this. I had to sleep upright, my arm in its sling elevated on a pillow next to me, and when the pain jolted me awake around 5 a.m. RIP my sleep schedule, I was even more shocked to discover Russell sleeping next to me. On top of the comforter, clothes still on, looking adorably rumpled. His glasses were on the bedside table next to him, and something about seeing them perched there made my heart twist. It must have been uncomfortable, sleeping in his clothes, but he didn't say anything, just ran a palm along his stubbled face, his other hand tripping along the bedside table until he found his glasses. Then he asked if I needed any help, and I told him I should be able to manage, mainly because I didn't know if I could handle him undressing me again. I could barely handle the warmth of him in bed next to me. I probably could have used the help, given that I nearly fell and broke my other arm in the shower. It took me 10 minutes to put on a shirt and pants, after which I immediately needed to pee, and it took me another full minute to wiggle my jeans down my legs. Torrance grabs my plate of food, and I mutter a thank you as she helps me to a table. Then she and Seth return to a table by themselves, seemingly of their own volition, where Seth cracks a Canadian newspaper and Torrance scrolls through her tablet, leaving me wondering what the hell went on between the two of them last night. It's decided that it's for the best if I head home early. Because I can't drive myself, Russell volunteers to drive my car back with me, his hair shower damp, wearing the same corduroy jacket he draped over my shoulders in the hospital yesterday. I hate to take you away from all of this, I say. He just gives me this look, and I struggle to hold in a laugh. Something changed between us last night, and whether we're simply closer friends or poised on the verge of something more, it fills me with a buzzing energy I haven't felt in a long time. As he rolls his suitcase from the lobby to the car, Torrance gives me a subtle lift of her eyebrows. I glance away quickly. The only hint at last night's tension during the drive home is when the audiobook I narrowly avoided on the way up starts playing as soon as I plug my phone in to charge. He bent down to worship at the altar of her thighs. God help him, he was going to pleasure her tonight until both of them saw stars. Please kill me, I say, scrambling one-handed for my phone. Oh, did you want to listen to an audiobook? I shut it off. Nope. I do not. Though he laughs, I don't miss the pink tint to his cheeks. The trip home is pleasant enough, and here's the Russell I've grown accustomed to over the past few weeks. Sure, we talk a little about Elodie, and about other topics we wouldn't have been as open about during our first few meetings. But I want the Russell from last night, the one I can no longer pretend I don't have feelings for, even if that still terrifies me. I've never dated someone with a kid, and while of course he's an independent person, capable of making his own decisions, Elodie changes things. After all, he said she's the reason he hasn't dated for a while. 5 years. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean it's been 5 years since he last had sex with someone. But it could. And I can't say I wouldn't love to be the person who ends that dry spell. Every so often, I glance at his hands on the steering wheel and remember them on my skin last night. If we slept together, I'd want to see him completely give in. Surrender. The opposite of the measured way he unbuttoned my shirt, unhooked my bra. An out-of-control Russell, one with his glasses askew and mouth swollen and fingers making imprints above my hips. Jacket tossed in a heap on the floor. A Russell who asks permission with a whispered plea in my ear. Begging me to undo him. To wreck him. Once he leaves after helping me bring my bags inside, I take a cold shower. When that doesn't work, I become very grateful I can move all the fingers on my dominant hand. I take the next day off work to see a doctor, who confirms the elbow fracture with another X-ray. I sign up for physical therapy and grocery deliveries and a credit card with rideshare rewards points, since it'll be about a month before I can safely drive again. And then I spend far too much time picking out what to wear to see my mother. You didn't have to throw yourself down a staircase to get out of this, Alex says when he picks me up. Shut it, you. I readjust my sling, and he reaches over to help me with the seatbelt. I want to see her. It's half true, at least, and I'm hoping for the other half on the drive to the hospital. It would take a whole fleet of masseuses to work out the anxiety coiled tight in my body. I'm not sure what I'm expecting her to look like after nearly 6 months apart, if she'll be exactly as I remember her, or if I'll be able to tell, just by looking at her, that something's different. I know this isn't going to be easy. My mom could drag me down better than Garrison, better than any of the guys I tried to project a positive front for. And she was the reason I did it. The reason I pretended to be sunshine, the reason I said everything was okay when nothing was. Because our father couldn't handle her darkness, and I couldn't let that happen to me. I won't let her comment on my appearance or my career or my relationship status. I told Alex he could let her know Garrison and I broke up, but she doesn't know the reason why, and I won't let her needle me about it. By the time we arrive, I've stuck and unstuck the Velcro on my sling so many times that it's no longer tacky in certain places. The hospital is a newer building downtown. After we check in at the front desk and go through a metal detector, a nurse leads us to a bright, cheery room filled with paintings donated by a local artist, all the tables empty except for the one Amelia Abrams is sitting at. She cut her hair. That's the first thing I notice. Alex, our dad, and I were a trio of redheads, our blonde mom the odd one out. She took such pride in it. It was damaged beyond belief and she was always dyeing out the grays, but it was long and mostly blonde and that was what mattered to her. She never wanted to look old, she told us, as though looking your age was some kind of punishment. When I got haircuts, she'd always say, "Not too short." Like if I lost my hair or had too little of it, I'd be losing some of my value. Now my mother's light hair is trimmed to just above her shoulders, shorter than mine, in a style that's not completely modern yet not outdated. It's cute, that's what it is. And her grays have grown out a bit, but she doesn't look old. Not the way she was always fearful of, at least. What she looks is tired. "Hey there, Alex." "Ariel," she says as we join her at the table. My full name, used so infrequently these days, yanks me back in time. Those memories aren't all bad. There were the Shabbat dinners she tried to make special, the prayers she taught us. The year we went as rock, paper, scissors for Halloween, won an elementary school costume contest, and collected more candy than I could ever hope to eat. Until she made us sell it to the dentist the next day because candy caused breakouts and God forbid her preteen daughter have a zit. Her boyfriends are only in those memories occasionally, the ones who made an effort to get to know Alex and me, the decent ones who gently encouraged her to talk to someone. "Do you want to medicate me? Turn me into someone different?" she yelled at one of them, a well-meaning accountant named Charlie. I was 11 and wholly unsure what being medicated meant. I sit up straighter and summon a smile, as though the force of it can banish the grayest parts of the past. It's not until we've exchanged pleasantries and I shuck off my jacket that she notices my arm. "Ari," she gasps. "What happened?" A couple of viewers disagreed with my forecasts, I say, then relent and tell her the almost truth. Her mouth forms a small O. "I'm so relieved you're okay." Alex catches her up on the kids and his job, getting out his phone to show her a video of the twins dancing to Starships, We Built This City, which he says is, inexplicably and unfortunately, their favorite song. I catch her up on KSEA, and she nods and laughs when she's supposed to, even if the laughs sound a little foreign. It's not that she seems happy, exactly, content is maybe closer to the right word. Still, I can't help thinking of all the years she refused treatment. Every time Alex and I worried about her, only for her to wake up the next day, pretending nothing was wrong. This hospital is an extreme, she's only here because her brain took her to the darkest of places. Because she was afraid, and she didn't know what else to do. My adult life would be different, I'm sure of it, if she'd gotten help sooner. There are too many what-ifs down that road, and yet I can't seem to redirect myself. She tells us about the hospital's recreational activities, the doctors, the group therapy, leaving out the more personal details. The food is actually amazing here, she says. What I want to know is why this time is different. Why she changed her mind about medication, or if she's only taking it so they'll discharge her. If she'll fall back on her old habits once she goes home. And she can't stop staring at my sling. They're going to let you on camera with that? She asks. I sure hope so, given it's my job. It doesn't reflect poorly on the station? Why would it do that? It doesn't affect my ability to forecast the weather. Dial it back, Alex's expression says. She's trying. Give her a chance. We're all really glad you're here. Alex touches her arm, ever the peacemaker. We want to support you however we can. She gives him a tight smile, and I try my best not to read into it. I've never known what's going through my mother's head. I can't imagine that changing now. Eventually, the conversation moves to my breakup, just as I feared it would. We weren't right for each other, I say with a shrug, because I can't bear to tell her the real reason. It just took us a while to realize it. I'm fully prepared for her to say something shitty, even though she doesn't know the details. You were too much. He couldn't handle it. Instead, she reaches across the table and places a hand on mine, her skin weathered and dotted with freckles. I'm sorry, she says, and if I close my eyes, I can pretend she's apologizing for so much more.